Sword of Coming Chapter 886. Xiao Mo took Xian Wei to the fortune-telling booth together. In Xian Wei's view, the stall was a bit shabby. There was only one table and one lotus, and there was no cloth flags upright, this Chao said. Although Mo is an immortal teacher, he is not sophisticated enough to talk about Jianghu experience, nothing more. Since he is now a mess with Chao Mo, he will teach him unique skills for free. It's just that Xian Wei had doubts again and couldn't help asking, Xiao Mo, why didn't Chao Mo accept that fairy money in the end? If I'm not mistaken, it is the snowflake money commonly used by fairy people in the legendary mountains. Don't the gods on the mountain treat money as money so much? Xiao Mo said, it's hard to give up good money, and those who can give up good money are the masters. Even if Xian Wei had heard of the truth in these books that weren't for the best use, if he took it out and compiled it into a book, it could fill a few baskets, but wouldn't the money in his pocket be cleaner than his face? Seeing that Chao Mo was about to put away the lottery on the table, Xian Wei immediately got anxious. Will he close the stall? How can making money be so sloppy? Xian Wei sat down on the bench, took the pickup tube from Qin Pingan, shook the bamboo tube vigorously, and shook out a bamboo stick. When he looked attentively, he muttered to himself, as if he was talking to the Qingshan Taoist robe. Xian Wei's expression was startled, sometimes frowned, sometimes nodded, occasionally asked, and finally blushed, opened his voice, and said with great excitement that the sign is strange, God, and immortal. Long is really a god. Xian Wei stood up, punched a handsome Taoist chief, then took out the gold ingot from his sleeve, placed it on the table again, and asked the immortal chief to teach the cracking method. Xiao Mo stood on the side, watching the second stunner embarrassed over there. Xiao Mo had nothing to say, and could only pretend not to know this person. In fact, Chen Ping'an didn't say a word from start to finish. Looking at Xian Wei's eager face, and then looking down at the gold ingot on the table, Chen Ping'an rubbed his eyebrows and had a headache. This is not the streets and alleys of the city, it is a ferry crossing of the Xianjia, just your trick, the acting skills are poor and you can't deceive people. Yu Xian Wei is a half-hearted gas trainer anyway. As a result, this trip to the north, the wind and food, sleeps, and a meal of wine and meat are just like the Chinese New Year, but in the end he saved a gold ingot, and I really can't blame others. As a grown-up, he is not as capable as Pei Qian when he was a child. Also impede myself to be a liar. Sure enough, the pedestrians on the road near the fortune-telling booth were not the immortal genealogist, or the sage cultivator, or the experienced old rivers and lakes. They all looked at the ferry with the eyes of a fool. The two scammers had to be short of money before they came here to pretend to be a ghost. Most of them are so poor that they can't get rid of the pot, so they can't choose their way in such a panic. It's like setting up a fortune-telling booth at the gate of the Heavenly Master's mansion on Longhu Mountain, playing wild chess among the colorful clouds in Baidi City. How much money can you make? Chen Pingan lifted his chin, and Xian Wei also found that nearby pedestrians were intentionally or unintentionally away from the fortune-telling booth, so he had to put away the gold ingot and put it in the wing of the house with the package. He was worried that he would be caught by a thief. If you complain, you have to carry it with you to be at ease. Chen Pingan put the lottery made temporarily last night into his sleeves, and then reminded Xian Wei that he could get up. Chen Pingan stretched out his hand and patted the tabletop, waved his sleeves again, and the tables and stools were scattered, empty. Xian Wei was stunned. Is this the magic of the immortal family made out of nothing? Can I learn from Chao Mo? The three left the ferry and returned to the capital along a broad official road. Xian Wei sighed and walked again. Chen Pingan glanced at Xian Wei's hairpin and asked in his heart, Xiao Mo, what do you think is the situation of the Xian Wei now? Assuming that the fake Taoist of this famous year and named Xian Wei is the first Taoist in the world, then according to the secret file on the side of the Summer Palace, this Taoist, with great luck has already fallen in that field. In the battle of ascent to the sky, this matter is beyond doubt, because when Chen Pingan returned to Haoran, he asked Li Xing. Li Xing personally said that this senior was indeed dead. This Taoist man with great merit in the world died after the battle, so that even the Taoist hairpin was left in the world, and was eventually picked up by the female founder of the fairy hairpin city, returned to Lingxiang on the earth of the world, and then walked up. On the road of cultivation, she sits on the blessed land of Yaoguang, but concentrates on trying to build a fairy hairpin city that is as high as the sky. Generally speaking, this Taoist should be reincarnated like a soldier. And the immortal way next to Chen Pingan at the moment, it is very likely that some of the soul remnants of that Taoist. The reincarnation of the gods of the old part of the ancient heavens can rely on pure divinity. This real body is like falling into a long sleep. Whether it is entrusted to a human or a monster monk, the skin of the decayed life and death, the divinity cannot be reduced or increased. The problem is that Xianwei is a cultivator, not a god. It is reasonable to say that the soldier solution that started 10,000 years ago, with each reincarnation, the old souls will continue to disperse, and new souls will continue to be filled. The more it is, it will only make the immortal way and others of later generations less and less like the earliest Taoist. Unless that Taoist, in 10,000 years, in fact, there have been only a few or even one reincarnation of soldiers. Xiao Mo was a little embarrassed. On this matter, Xiao Mo didn't dare to say anything nonsense. The sun asked you blind. When it comes to the reincarnation of the cultivator, Xiao Mo is a real layman, because 10,000 years ago, regardless of the human race or the monster race, the monks lived and died for almost one lifetime. Regarding the technique, after 10,000 years, and before 10,000 years, the heights before and after are roughly the same, and the difference is not too big. But it can be said that there are many types of chi practitioners today, and the context is complicated. They only talk about the number and breadth, not talking about the pure killing power and the high level of Taoism. Compared with 10,000 years ago, it really requires a lot of spells. Chen Pingan nodded. It doesn't matter, just put the matter aside for now. In order to determine the identity and realm of Xianwei, he can't use those vicious methods to arrest his soul. Chen Pingan is neither willing nor daring to act like this. Besides, Xianwei really had a lot of connections with the Taoist person, or deliberately hid himself, for example, for the fairy hairpin city to find a place on his own side, and Chen Ping's current methods were really useless. However, Chen Pingan believed that this possibility was unlikely, and he used the heart of a villain to save the gentleman's belly. After all, the other party is a virtuous person who does not hesitate his own life and death to open the way for the world. Or is it that the other party uses some incredible secret method to deceive the sky through self-deception? Crossing the sea for 10,000 years. In addition, Chen Pingan also worried about whether it was Zhou Zi's plan, or whether it was implicated in Zhou Zi. If only according to Xianwei's own statement, it was because of a deep blessing when he was young. By coincidence, coupled with the smoke from the ancestral tomb, he picked up a fragment of a fairy book, and then began to abandon the text and cultivate the immortal. Therefore, Xianwei doesn't know the division of the mountains realm now, and can only know the scenery of some land gods through those ghosts. Xianwei is currently the Lujin realm of the lower 5 realms, which is the so-called remaining realm. Moreover, there are no preachers, no masters, no natal things. Xianwei has a little understanding of cultivation, and he is ignorant about the use of spiritual energy and spells. This fake Taoist deception guy has been used to the roads of Jianghu, seeing many immortals jumping, deceiving people, and being deceived by others. The worst time was when he first went out. The scholar met soldiers and was there. In the wilderness and ridge, he encountered a group of trail-cutting bandits who had fallen into the grass. Because Xianwei was literate and spoke elegantly, he was arrested and worked as a dog-headed sergeant and Mr. Accountant for several months. They were mixed up, and Xian Wei fled down the mountain. At that time, there was an extra plaque in the lobby. It was Xian Wei's handwriting, the 4 characters of the list, God rewards hard work. In fact, this matter, the answer to this mystery, the best person in the world who can solve the puzzles for himself is the city lord of Baidi City who has tried to prove that he is not the ancestor of Taoism. There was a saying in Haoran Mountain that at that time Jing Juzhong had not yet reached the 14th level, and his senior brother Cui Yang was also the first disciple of Wen Xing, and the 2 sides had just played 10 rounds of colorful clouds. Don't learn to be immortal because you have shallow talents. Don't learn to embroider tigers if you are not extremely clever. Chen Pingan thought of a saying for no reason and said, a metaphor that Cui Dongshan once played. He was born as a man, like a wooden boat, then reincarnated, his soul separated, he demolished the east wall to make up the west wall, stitched together, and over time, how to distinguish the new are the 2 the same as the old boat? Xiao Mo immediately checked the Xinhu books habitually, and asked, my son, does this belong to the debating technique of the famous family, does it involve the righteous names of things? Chen Pingan nodded and said, like my husband, although he has a general perception of famous artists, he thinks this knowledge is easy to be sophistry, but he still feels sorry for the current situation of such declining famous artists. It must not be nothing. Xiao Mo hesitated for a moment, and said frankly, I don't recommend that the son keep the Xian Wei by his side, it is better to hand this person directly to the Confucian temple. There are too many accidents, and if anything happens, the consequences will be disastrous. It is obviously more secure to hand it over to the Zhongtu Confucian temple. Chen Pingan explained patiently, once I was accustomed to this kind of thing, and the fun of practice, apart from climbing up the boundary, it's still unknown and solving mysteries. Finally, and the most important thing, I don't think it's going to be the most important thing. If Wei pushes out from his side, he can avoid anything. It is very likely to be counterproductive. Those who are far away are often in front of you, and those who are close in front of you may actually be far away. Xiao Mo smiled and said, it's because I am narrow-minded, not as wide-minded as the sun. Chen Pingan said helplessly, then drink more, the sky and the earth are no bigger than a wine bowl. Xian Wei raised his palm between his eyebrows and looked into the distance. There seemed to be a wine shop with a flag on the side of the road. Some wine bugs rebelled in his stomach. He quickly asked, Master Chow, are you hungry? On the side of Xiaomo, Xian Wei took Chow Mo one by one, calling his name directly. But on Chen Pingan's side, Xian Wei is still very particular, and it's up to people to order dishes. Chen Pingan glanced at the small wine shop that occupies a small area, and the content on the banner is written with a bit of immortality, and he dismissed the horse and turned his head and stayed behind forever. In fact, I noticed it when I came here. It's a place that sells fake wine. It's not a common heart. As long as it is the famous Xianzhou wine on the mountain, it can be sold there, not to mention the Changchun Palace wine and the Book Jinhu Wui wine, even the sweet-scented osmanthus stuffed from Leilongking. The reason is that the price of wine is too cheap, and there are really many people buying wine over there. One dared to sell, the other dared to drink. Xian Wei was really greedy for the drink, and he was dragged by Xiao Mo to the house to post the talisman early in the morning. He was hungry now, and he continued to encourage Master Chow to go to the wine shop and sit for a while. He said that this kind of fish and dragon fairy is not certain. You can meet a strange person and stranger, if you meet each other, it will not be a good luck for the immortal family. Xian Wei kept chattering as he walked, and then Chen Pingan dispelled the other party's thoughts with just one sentence, saying that drinking and eating are all right, you come to treat him. Xian Wei immediately changed the subject. Master Chow, the book said that the sweet and golden syrup, the immortal fermented wine, the immortal fruit in the mountain, are all true. For example, the Jiaoli fire date, and what 1,000-year Ganoderma lucidum bibimbap, 10,000 years of wild ginseng stewed old duck pot. Master Chow has tasted it. How does it taste? Chen Pingan was so angry that he was out of town all his life, whether it was rivers, lakes or mountains, and the expenses on food, clothing, housing and transportation were really rare. Seeing that Master Chow's face was unhappy, Xianwei stopped talking, glanced at the banner and said, "It is really immortal. Generally speaking, there must be immortals drinking immortal brew, but it's a pity. Chen Ping's placement is deaf ears." Last night, Ningyao told Chen Ping'an, who turned a book in Ren Yuniyun Tower, that the retreat would end soon, and there would be 2 days at most. Chen Pingan didn't let her worry. It was no less than a day or 2. "I just received a Feijian letter from Luopa Mountain not long ago, and I might have to attend a wedding banquet in the capital tomorrow." Xiao Mo patted Xianwei on the shoulder. Xianwei wondered, "Xiao Mo, what do you do?" Xiao Mo smiled and said, "Walk well, talking is tiring." Xianwei sighed. He was poor and short, and he was going to be taught by an entourage to be a man and do things. When Chen Pingan passed by the wine shop, he suddenly stopped and turned around and walked straight into the wine shop, because there was a man in white clothes who had a table alone and was drinking. It was really caught by Xianwei. Jing Juzhong raised his wine bowl and smiled. "It's such a coincidence." Chen Pingan walked to the wine table, saluted with Jing Juzhong, shouted "Mr. Zheng," and just sat silently. There were 3 empty wine bowls on the wine table. Jing Juzhong was obviously waiting for his party to pass by the wine shop. Chen Pingan was sure that Jing Juzhong in his own eyes and the man in white in the eyes of many drinkers in the wine shop were 2 people. There is no need for Jing Juzhong to say anything. The puzzle in Chen Pingan's mind is half solved. Chen Pingan didn't think he was worthy of letting Jing Zhongzhong wait. It must be the immortal Wei beside him. Xianwei took his seat generously, but Xiao Mo stood behind Chen Pingan after helping to pour the wine. Because the other party didn't use blindness to himself, Xiao Mo knew the identity of the man in front of him and recognized it at a glance. Following Chen Pingan to Howren World, although it was not long before, Xiao Mo was very interested in collecting some news from the mountains. Of course, all of them were the pinnacles of Ascension Realm. Remember it silently. Jing Juzhong glanced at the immortal lieutenant at the same table and said, "Take the hairpin to scratch the wine, and the hairpin will be exhausted, just like a person grinding ink. The body and name are destroyed, and the eternal life will last forever." Xianwei is happy. "Good fellow, if you want to talk about these vain heads, I can't beat Master Chow, so I'm afraid of you." Twisting the wine bowl with 2 fingers, without having to brew any words, the young Taoist priest started talking nonsense seriously, shaking the wine bowl gently, sniffing, and smiling. "The road is 1 foot high and the devil is 1 foot high, and there are many lives. Just call Naiha." Chen Pingan's eyelids trembled. Jing Juzhong smiled and said, "The good words are done. It is gratifying and congratulating." Xianwei complained and said, "The life of the sky is like a boat on a dry land. What can I do? Can I be against the sky? Anyway, it's the same purpose. How can words be controlled and how people can come?" Jing Juzhong smiled, stood up, and left. A small summer money was left on the table as a drink money. Jing Juzhong only said 3 words to Chen Pingan with his own voice, "I don't take it seriously." This is probably the way to teach Chen Pingan and Xianwei to get along. Chen Pingan replied with his heartfelt words, "Thanks to Mr. Zheng for his teaching." After Jing Juzhong walked out of the wine shop, Chen Pingan put the little summer money in his sleeve and shouted to the shopkeeper, "Let's check out first." Xianwei was confused and asked, "Master Chow, who is it? It's not reliable to speak." "Fortunately, it's okay to be a man, and he knows to leave money for drinks." Chen Pingan was still too lazy to pay attention to this servant, but only gave a snowflake money to the shopkeeper of the wine shop, and drank the so-called Changchun Palace Immortal Brew on the table. Chen Pingan asked Xiao Mo to sit and drink, then bowed his head and took a sip of the wine, and asked in his heart, "Xiao Mo, your 4 flying swords." When I met Xian Wei at the inn for the first time, Xiao Mo sacrificed 4 flying swords. Xiao Mo didn't have any hiding things, and said straightforwardly, 3 flying swords, the main attack, and 1 auxiliary practice, but now they are very tasteless. The 4 flying swords have never had a name, and you may still need a son in the future. Do it for you. The first 3, one of them, Xiao Mo, is most in love, because it can drag a star from the sky and fall to the ground. If you ask a sword with someone, you need to really work hard, and success or failure depends on this. The other 2 are very mediocre, a magical power that can imitate other people's flying swords, but unfortunately it won't last too long. It will also drop a rank and reduce its killing power. It's better than nothing. There is also a flying sword that can temporarily create a prison and imprison Taoists. The soul still belongs to the slanting edge of the sword, not the right path of swordsmanship, so when I asked people about the sword in the early years, I didn't like to sacrifice these flying swords. They were fancy and impractical. The last flying sword is extremely beneficial to practice in the early stage. It used to make me climb quite quickly. Of course, it is not worth mentioning compared to the power of the sun. This sword can allow me to absorb the world without any refining. His aura, within 1,000 miles, became what the cheap practitioners call a land of nowhere, and I can take off the sword and transfer to other places to practice. In my early years, I waited for me to be among the immortals, now the immortal realm. After that, this flying sword is meaningless, so I have a taste of it. In the future, I will be with the sun. If I meet the sword fairy embryo, Xiao Mo will also accept a few direct disciples and teach them swordsmanship carefully until one day I find a suitable person to be my close disciple, as long as the other party Dao Axayan is tough enough, so I stripped out this natal flying sword and gave it to this proud disciple. Chen Pingan smiled, "Little Mo, don't just talk, drink more." Xiao Mo had a look of anticipation and asked, "My son, in our fallen mountain, is there a suitable candidate now? If there happens to be such a sword fairy embryo on the mountain, I don't have to bother so much, just find a close disciple. It's not a joke." Chen Pingan took a sip of wine, waved his hand and declined and said, "You don't have a joke like you, take your time." Seeing that Xian Wei looked in a trance, Chen Pingan asked, "What's wrong?" Xian Wei patted his stomach, and said aggrieved, "I can't drink enough alcohol, I'm hungry." Where did he think of this wine shop before, which only sells drinks but not food? Moreover, the shopkeeper of the wine shop is only a man, who has a great discrepancy with the book, and the woman who sells the wine is round and jade, ready to come out. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "When you get to the capital, let Xiaoma help you buy an earlier meal." Xian Wei frowned when he heard it, and said, "There are still more than 12 miles away. Master Chow, with my feet, walk back slowly, not to delay your work." Chen Pingan smiled and turned his head to look outside the wine shop, with people coming and going and passing by. Things that go with wine. Moonlight, beauty, bad words. Hometown, miss, dream. Chen Pingan and other Xian Wei drank the wine slowly. The 3 of them left the wine shop together. Xian Wei lingered. When he thought that there was still such a long way to go, he felt stunned and lacking energy. Fortunately, Master Chow was considerate and abducted, leaving the official way, by the shallow water of the reed flower, let Xiao Mo grab the shoulder of Xian Wei, while Chen Pingan used his own water and cloud body and returned to the capital together. The 3 of them came to a small Taoist temple where the door face did not show the slightest identity. Xian Wei nibbled on the sesame seed cakes that Xiao Mo had bought with help. The 2 rolled together. They were stuffed with dried plums and vegetables. They were delicious, and they were full. Chen Pingan stood on the street outside this Jingshi Dao's Henjia office with arms folded in his hands, as if he was not in a hurry to get started. Seeing that his son did not move, Xiao Mo took a few steps forward, bent down and looked down at the stone monument standing beside the steps. The person who erected the monument is now the Taoist leader of the Chongshu Bureau of the Dai dynasty. According to the inscription, a long list of titles, the Three-Dong disciple led Jingshi Dao Shijing Wu Lingjing, the master of Chongshu Hall. Before passing this place with Ning Yao, Chen Pingan wondered who this Wu Lingjing was and how he was able to hold the title of Tao Jingjing and manage dozens of Dali court officials, which is equivalent to directly drawing a line with the gods. Later, I looked through the files at the Jingqing Qintian supervisor and found out that it was the middle-aged Taoist from the Qingyuan Kingdom's Baiyun Temple. According to the current officialdom of Dai, the reason why this person was able to reach the sky in one step is that the abbot of the Chongshu Bureau's affairs is to accompany the capital. The great recommendation of Lu Laoshang from the Ministry of Rights, the friendship of fellow countrymen, the ascension of chickens and dogs to heaven is reasonable. Not only the Chongshu Bureau, but in fact, together with the white-clothed monk of the Dali Scripture Translation Bureau, the Buddhist dragon elephant, who won the title of Master of Sanzang, came from the Qingyuan Kingdom and from Baishuwei Temple. Xianwei said vaguely, "Master Chao, what are you doing here?" Chen Pingan said, "Wandering around." Xianwei asked again, "Then why don't we go in?" Chen Pingan said helplessly, "Don't wait for you to finish eating first." Xianwei sighed. He didn't even know what the so-called Beijing Master Dao Jingya office was on the plaque. I just felt that such a little dignified Taoist temple and Xiaomen Xiaohu couldn't scare myself, a fake Taoist priest. After Xianwei finished eating, he clapped his hands. "Let's go, take a look." Zheoguan's concierge was a little Taoist boy. Chen Pingan claimed to be a friend of Daola Gelying. He came to the Taoist temple for a cup of tea. As soon as he heard that he was a good friend of Gudaolu, Xiao Dao Tong let him go, otherwise his Taoist temple would not accept ordinary outsiders. Jingshi Daojing quickly greeted him personally. He was an old monk in the Golden Core realm. He held the whisk in his hand and hit the inspector with a respectful expression. "I have seen Lord Qin Shan." Chen Pingan made a polite return, and said with a smile, "It's disturbing." The old Dao smiled and said, "Where is it? Lord Qin Shanju is the honor of Daolu Academy to come here." Leading the three to sit in a room, the old Taoist asked the Taoist priest to bring tea to the three distinguished guests. Lao Daojing asked softly, "I heard that Qin Shanju has been practicing on the Great Wall of Jianqi for many years. During this period, has he ever discussed the Tao and exchanged knowledge with the sage Bai Yujing who sits in the sky?" It means the city lord of Xinshao City in the 12th floor of Bai Yujing's 5th floor. Chen Pingan shook his head. "It's just a face-to-face encounter from a distance, and there is no intersection with that old god. In fact, it is a pity. In the future, he will definitely visit Xinshao City when he travels to the Qingming world, and of course it is only a visit in the literal sense. As for the Zikala and his ilk, it is another matter." The old Dao nodded, and when this Qin Jianxian had a cup of tea, he asked if he could walk around in the Taoist temple. The old man smiled and said that there was nothing wrong with it. Qin Shanju left and watched. Chen Pingan took Xiao Mo and Xianwei out of the house. The old Taoist stood at the door for a moment, and then went to busy himself with his affairs. Chen Pingan came under an ancient cypress tree. Xianwei asked curiously, "Xiao Mo, what kind of official is Jingshidao?" Xiao Mo said, "The Taoist priests in charge of all Taoist priests in Dali capital." "Good official." Xianwei was frightened, his thoughts turned sharply, and he asked tentatively, "Xiao Mo, can you ask Xiao Mo to help me ask for a Taoist priest?" Xiao Mo shook his head and said, "You go and talk to your son about it yourself." Suddenly a few clear chimes. Chen Pingan recovered, put away his thoughts, and said, "Let's go." Before leaving the Taoist temple, Chen Pingan found the Jingshi Daojing, and found that apart from Guling, all the Sidaelu, including the Beijing CI litigation, Qing CI, and Palm Seal, were all waiting in the office of Master Daojing. As if waiting for Chen Jiangxian's appearance, Chen Pingan just left with a smile as he didn't know these Taoist records to watch the lively thoughts. Later, Xiao Mo and Xian Wei came to Chongshu Bureau. Because it was the translation office and the newly built government office built by Dolly, it seemed more majestic than the old Taoist temple, so Xian Wei walked all the way trembling, afraid to breathe. Xiao Mo joked, "Do you need me to help you talk to the sun?" Xian Wei heard the implication, he smiled and replied, "Xiao Mo, do you have a bamboo forest in your house?" Xiao Mo was a little at a loss, not knowing how to answer for a while. Chen Pingan finally took off his cloth shoes and sat in a boardwalk outside the Buddhist temple. Xiao Mo took Xian Wei and sat on the steps. Chen Pingan put his hands on his abdomen, and began to close his eyes and rest his mind. Peace of mind. Tu tuo. Observe the precepts of asceticism. There is an old saying in my hometown, plowing fields on stone cliffs. It is used to describe the poverty and hard work of a poor person, to the point of exaggeration. For some reason, it was the first time that Chen Pingan came into contact with the Buddhist case in a book, and when he saw the 4 characters polished into a mirror, he would think of this hometown proverb for no reason. Since a person has their own homes of peace of mind, of course, they also have their own places of worry, so that people can't wander around and fight against the wall. Senior brother Cui Yang, probably the attic where the ladder was removed, can only look through the small window. The stars are bright, the wind and rain are shining, the Milky Way is shining, the snow is flying, and the lonely moon is lonely. It may also be that after leaving home, looking at a poor teacher outside the window of a school in a foreign land, his eyebrows were flying when he taught the children the knowledge of sages. Aliang, it may be a mass grave in the wilderness. Wei Bo may be the woman who went into the water to salvage the fragments of the golden body 1,000 years ago. Married woman ghost may be a courageous scholar who reads aloud the books of sages and sages on that mountain road at night. Has been lingering. The more people want to be black and white, and the more they want to distinguish between right and wrong, the more painful they are. Unconsciously, moo drums sounded. Chen Pingan still closed his eyes, and said, "Xiao Mo, you and Xian Wei can go back to the house first. Over there." Xiao Mo said softly, "It's okay, we just wait for the sun." As for that Xian Wei, he had eaten jiafan at the Interpretation Bureau before. The sky was big and the land was big, the food was the best, and the face and everything were kept aside. Although sitting here all the time, it made Xian Wei feel a bit bored, but compared to the distress of the journey northward in those years, it was actually good, and he was thinking about sweetness here. After that, Chen Pingan opened his eyes and looked up. It was already at the heart of the moon to the sky. The bright moon and tall buildings are lonely, and the moonlight is like water and water like the sky. Chen Pingan retracted his gaze and glanced at Xiao Mo and Xian Wei on the other side of the steps. Xiao Mo was still sitting on the other side of the steps. As for Xian Wei, he was quite capable and could fall asleep while sitting. He was snoring like thunder at the moment. Chen Pingan got up and went to the side of the steps, putting on his shoes. Xiao Mo was about to reach out and pat the immortal Wei beside him. Chen Pingan smiled softly, "It's okay, let him sleep a little longer." After sitting for half an hour, Chen Pingan patted Xian Wei's head. Said to Xiao Mo, "You have to hit someone as soon as possible." Xian Wei rubbed his eyes and asked in a daze, "What time is it?" The next sentence is whether you want to have a supper. Chen Pingan took them away from the translation bureau, and indeed took Xianwei to find a supper stall. The old master Yu Hong and his party took the Lichuan ferry of the Changchun Palace and chose to disembark at the new Jiadu, which is about to be renamed the Longzhou area of Chuzhou, and then went to Hongzhou town, where the three rivers converge. The Temple of Water God in Yejiang. In the dead of night, Yu Hong visited the water temple. A continent of mountains and rivers, the fourth grade water god. The golden body of this Yuye river god empress is not low. On the water temple, a temple blessing has been changed a few years ago, so he is not a smart person. The good men and believers who come here to burn incense and make wishes are endless. This woman can only say that she treats people decently, but in those on the big pilgrim side, her ability to manage relationships seems very mediocre. She even made a few mistakes. As a result, several big pilgrims turned to the Xiuhua River and Chongtan River, but the of water, Li Qingzhu, has never been able to do anything. Moving, it seems that she is the best candidate for her own temple blessing. After Yu Hong reported his identity, he smiled and said that he didn't need to trouble the water empress, they could rush to the water mansion by themselves, but the woman who didn't understand the feelings and sophistication of the temple really did so, just cast a symbol to open the water and open the way to the water mansion. The secret carriage and horse symbol was ready to enter the water. Yu Hong smiled and didn't care. She took the lead in the carriage. Huang Mei, a direct disciple, looked rather displeased. The Xianjia chariot ran away from the water, and soon came to the gate of the water mansion. The temple wished the woman and the guard to report the news. Li Qingzhu soon went out to greet Yu Hong in person, and Dali was the first-class worshipper, and he was still a martial artist in the 9 realms. What's more, she had a dewy marriage with a direct disciple of Yu Hong in her early years, and had a lot of trouble in the mountains. Yu Hong keenly noticed that the water empress always seemed to have a little sadness between her eyebrows. In fact, Li Qing's biggest wish in recent years is to seek stability. It is impossible to imagine that a righteous of rivers and rivers has disguised several times and went to the Shanjun Temple and Taifujiangshui Temple in Piyun Mountain to burn incense. The Bian's family hosted a wedding banquet in Dali capital. Lin Shui entered Beijing this time specifically to attend the wedding banquet of Shi Jiaqin's eldest son. The last time I met with classmate Shi Jiaquan was many years ago in my hometown Huaiwang town. It is hard to imagine that Shi Jiaqin's son was still a child at that time, and now he is married. Shi Chuanjia just missed her best friend Li Baoping when she was young. This time, Lin Shui was the only one who was there. Li Baoping and Li Huai were not there. Dong Shuijing was temporarily in trouble and could not get out of his body and could not rush to the capital, but the trustee gave a staggering money. The key is that the person Dong Shuijing entrusted is even more scary. There is a wine gourd hanging from his waist, and he is full of alcohol. He just came here after hanging up. This person does not have a self-registration number at all. He only said that he was helping his friend Dong Shuijing to send red packets up. Fortunately, someone in the Bian's family recognized the identity of the other party. Except for the laziness of the capital's rich family, most of the credit is actually due to that jug. In the officialdom of the capital, or even the entire Dali court, this person he is the only one who can take a hip flask to the yamen. But the other party just left the red envelope and left. No one dared to keep this person. Because this person was the drunkard Chao Gingxin, who was transferred from Longzhou supervisor to assistant capital worker Yu assistant, and then to capital assistant, and the eldest grandson of the Chao family of Shangzhou state. Regardless of Chao Jenkson's reputation in Dallas officialdom, how he is a person and an official, this is the 3rd grade of the real Dali Beijing official. And his second uncle is also the hunter inspector Chao Ping. When the Bian family and the parents got the news, they hurried out to chase the Chao Juxin. I never thought that the man was swaying, but his steps were not slow, and there was no one at the corner of the street. It seemed that during the period, she slightly bumped a woman's shoulder, and walked back, making an apologize, with a bright smile. Seeing that the man looked handsome, the woman probably didn't think she was too disadvantaged, so she just laughed and cursed. In addition to Chao Gung's heart, there is also Zhao Yu, who is serving as the assistant minister of the criminal ministry. Because of his busy work, he also asked someone to send a red envelope, which made the Bian family and the family of the in-laws feel extremely shameful. Shi Jiaqin's husband, Bian Wenmao, was born in the royal family of the Qing dynasty in Dali capital. His family background is not very prominent. It is just that Bian Wenmao worked in the Hanlin Academy, which was regarded as the place of the prime minister, so although he is not a big official nowadays. But in the end it is the first-class Qing dynasty, so the family worship of the Bian family is an elder of the Zhushitang of the Changchun Palace. Lin Shui is a scholar of De Sui Mountain Cliff Academy, and later became the Dada Temple Wish at the Dali companion capital. Earlier in the two capitals of Dali and De Sui, Lin Shui was already a great master. The one who talked about it, a typical youthful fame and scholarship, is a young prodigy at Shanaya Academy, but he didn't participate in the imperial examination. He practiced together and made great progress. Lin Shui declined the invitation of Bian's family and did not sit at the main table. He sits at the same table with a group of fairy masters on the mountain. At the main table, the person with the largest official status was a Dallas minister of engineering who was invited by the in-laws of the Bian family. In addition, there is Tanhua Lang Yang Shuang, very young, and Wang Qinruo, one of the 15 second-tier scholars. Both of them are considered back-incomers of the Hanlin Academy of Dai, but Bian Wenmao dares to put on the prestige of the officialdom to these two. Another Fu Yu, who had just been transferred back to the capital from the prefect of Baoshi County, took the initiative to chat with Lin Shui. Lin Shui, as the seat of reading in the native place of Dali, is even more of an innocent monk. The old lady enshrined by the Bian family was in the Longmen realm. Although the realm was not high, she was still a member of the Patriarch's Hall in Changchun Palace. Most of the disciples of Changchun Palace went down to the mountain to practice. Except for the Yumi, the old woman still has lingering fears. In addition, the 4 Changchun Palace genealogical monks she brought were all young female monks: Zhongnan, Chu Mingjiao, Lin Saifu, Han Bia. The highest-ranking person is Zhongnan, and the old women will call her aunt. As for Chu Mingjiao and Han Bia, they are both officials in Dali capital, and their family has no friendship with the Bian family. Zhongnan glanced at that Lin Shui from time to time. Chu Mingjiao kept peeking at the famous Tanhua Lang. Lin Saifu looked at Wang Qinruo, one of the newcomer Mao Lin Lang, because the talisman he presented was slightly strange, like a fate of marriage. Fengshen Zhenshuang Yang explores flowers, and Wang Maolin is full of talent. The female monk of the Changchun Palace chooses a beloved man to become a Taoist couple, and then grow old together. This is a practice that cannot be bypassed. Whether the chosen Taoist couple is a mountain person or not is not particular. Only Han Bia, just burying her head and eating vegetables, she has to eat the money back. Lin Shou was puzzled, wondering why the young woman from the Changchun Palace looked at herself at different intervals. Understanding. Why is there no impression? He certainly didn't remember that the first time the two met was when Lin Shui went out for a long trip. In the town of Red Candle, one was on the shore and the other on the boat. At that time, they were both young girls. At this wedding banquet, Lin Shui stayed until the end, and almost all the guests had dispersed. Shi Jiaqin was still relatively childish, and his son and daughter-in-law didn't care about it. He came to Lin Shui and sat alone, laughing and joking with Lin Shui. Envy or not, my son is married to a wife, you Lin Shou is good, you are still a bachelor, fortunately you are on the mountain, otherwise you have to add an old word. What? I plan to wait for my grandsons to get married, so you continue to come here for a wedding drink alone. Lin Shou smiled and said nothing. After being slapped on the shoulder, Lin Shou turned his head and looked around. He saw that guy and said in a maddening voice, "Hidden at the wedding wine, right?" The woman looked at the man in the blue shirt and long coat, and she blurted out, "Chen Pingyuan." In fact, Shi Jiachuan has not seen Chen Pingyuan for more than 20 years. For some reason, I can recognize it at a glance. Chen Pingyuan smiled and nodded, handed out a red envelope, and said with a smile, "Don't be too small, courtesy is light and affectionate." Never thought that Shi Jiachuan opened the red envelope directly, his eyes widened, and the young wealthy fan immediately grinned too. Xiao Shuqian. Shi Jiachuan returned to his hometown last time, but also failed to see Chen Pingyuan. She vaguely learned some gossip. In addition to taking over the 2 shops in Qilong Alley of the Shi family, Chen Pingyuan also bought a few hills to the west and became a big landlord. It's just that Chen Pingyuan seems to be away from home all year round. He likes to be busy outside. He is close to Weibo, the monarch of the Piyin Mountain, and he has climbed a mountain that is unimaginable by ordinary people. It's hard not to make money. Good thing. Good man rewarded. Shi Jiachen's memory of Chen Pingyuan is a bit vague, only one thing is reassuring. However, Shi Jiachuan didn't say a word about these things, even on her husband's side. Chen Pingyuan sat on the chair next to Lin Shi. Shi Jiachuan laughed, and generously put away the red envelope, went and fetched a jug of wine and 2 wine glasses, and handed them to Chen Pingyuan. "Sit on the side and give Chen Pingyuan first. Pour full wine, and don't forget to," jokingly said, "I still have a girl waiting to get married. Before the next wedding banquet, I will definitely send you an invitation. The money will follow today's specifications. But don't forget it, just like Lin Shi said, wedding drinks can't be hidden." Chen Pingyuan smiled and said, "No problem, as long as you don't travel far, you will definitely come." Shi Jiachuan smiled and said, "Are there any marriages?" It is not much more difficult for the gods on the mountain to find a Taoist couple than to get married under the mountain. Chen Pingyuan smiled and nodded. "The letter of appointment has been issued and we haven't officially married yet, but it will be soon." Shi Jiachuan squinted at Lin Shi. "Tut, look at Chen Pingyuan, and then look at yourself." Lin Shou drank a sullen wine. Lin Shi suddenly turned his head and looked out the door. He came to congratulate 2 guests who were absolutely unexpected. Emperor Song He of Dei, Queen Yumian. Shi Jiachuan is still whispering, "Who, such a big air," his husband and the elders of the 2 families are all sweating. "What are you afraid of? Chen Pingyuan is there anyway." Lin Shi stood up, coughed with Shi Jiachuan, and said softly, "It's Your Majesty the Emperor and the Empress." Shi Jiachuan rolled his eyes at Lin Shou, and he would tell a joke. However, Shi Jiachuan quickly got up. Even if the Bien's family has the surname of the Shangzhou country, if the children get married, the Emperor's Majesty can come in person. What do you want, dream? It's just that she looked at her side again. Chen Pingyuan hadn't got up yet, and was busy drinking. Chen Pingyuan put down the wine glass. Lin Shi had already taken Shi Jiachuan to a wine table elsewhere. Bien Wenmao came to his wife's unsteady steps and grabbed her hand hard. Only at this moment did Shi Jiachuan dare to believe that Lin Shi was really not joking. There was no sound. Emperor Song He walked to the wine table and saluted. "Song He has seen Mr. Qin." Chen Pingyuan stood up, smiled and asked, "What's the matter?" The emperor said, "I implore Mr. Qin to be the teacher of the Great Li State." Sword of Coming Chapter 887. Emperor Song He said straightforward words, but saw that Chen Pingyuan didn't seem to have the intention to speak at all. After a while, Song He obviously didn't have the idea of going back home like this. He glanced at the banquet and chopsticks on the table and moved his hand. A chair, slightly changed its position, tilted towards Chin Pingan, and asked, "Mr. Chin, shall we sit down and talk?" Chin Pingan nodded, moved the chair, and pulled his gown again. After sitting down, he raised his leg. A pair of white-bottomed and black-faced melaleuc soled cloth shoes are exposed on the feet. "Song," he said, "Mr. Chin, think about it, I can wait." Chin Pingan asked with a smile, "Does it mean the Queen Mother?" Song, he shook his head and said, "It's my own thought." Song, he didn't feel that if he asked, the other party would immediately agree to serve as Dolly national teacher. 3 groups of people, 3 wedding banquet tables, not adjacent. His Majesty the Emperor and Chin Pingan were at a table alone. Naturally they wanted to discuss business matters, and both parties were already seated. A king at the foot of the mountain and a suzerain on the mountain are people of the same age. The two did not sit opposite each other, nor did they each face the leftovers on the wine table coldly. Queen Yumian stood beside another wine table. During this trip, Emperor Song he naturally went on a tour in microservices. Except for Empress Yumian, he was accompanied by only 3 retinues, an old in the attire of a rich man, and an old who was not very public in the Dolly court and the opposition. Enshrined by the Song clan, he is the guardian of the Song clan's imperial tomb. The last retinue stayed on the street outside the gate of Bien's house at this moment, and was responsible for guarding the carriage. Yu Mingui is the queen of Dei, and the Song family of Dei has had the national teacher Cui Yang in the past 100 years. He never worried about the harem, noble relatives, and eunuchs in politics. Therefore, Yu Mian has also seen many good people on the mountain. Now, as romantic and suave as Weibo, the monarch of Beiwa Mountain, the immortal teacher of Fengshua Temple who looks like a child, and the rich and long beard of the old patriarch of Yunlin looks like a god. In addition, there are a handful of exceptions that make Yu Mian even more impressive. For example, Ruan Cheong, the saint of Longquan Jianzong, the chief consecration of the Dei dynasty, can't be said to be raunchy, but dull and reticent every time he enters the palace. When I saw the emperor, Master Wan didn't have much to say. Almost all the emperors were questioning. Master Wan answered very succinctly and concisely every time, just like, "Want to go back to the mountain to strike an iron sword." There is also the Sia mountain monarch Tong Wenchang, who is like a villager and veteran, and he likes to be barefoot all year round. Not to mention standing with Weibo, even if standing side by side with Zhongyue mountain Jinqing, to be honest, she will never judge people by their appearance. I would also sincerely feel that Mr. Tong Shan is indeed a bit shabby. When Tong Shanjun was sitting there, Yu Mian had to worry about when the other party would pick his feet. As for the young sword fairy in the fallen mountain in front of him, of course he will remember Yu Mian vividly. Yu Mian is a very careful woman, she just noticed the pair of finely stitched cloth shoes at a glance. The last table, of course, is the 2 in-laws whose children have just tied the knot. Both of them are officials from Dolly capital, and they are not big officials, but they are all clear-cut outflows from the Kejia division, but now there is only one who is eligible to participate in the early dynasty, Bien Wen Mao. Everyone held their breath, no one dared to whisper. A pair of newly married couples are flushed with excitement and dreamlike. As the only outsider, Lin Shui sat beside his classmate Shi Jechuan. Empress Yu Mian turned her head and smiled and looked at them, stretched out her hand and pressed twice to signal everyone to sit down. After everyone sat down, Bien Wen Mao found that the empress was still standing there. He wanted to stand up, but just as soon as he lifted his butt, he felt even more wrong, so he had to sit back silently. "Emperor Song," he said, "I have always had a doubt, I want to ask Mr. Chin." Chen Pingan said, "Just ask." Song, he asked, "It seems that Mr. Chen's perception of the Dolly court is not bad after those encounters back then." For example, according to the espionage report of Dolly, Chen Pingon passed the Susui country in the middle of Aquarius Island during the second long journey, and became a friendship with Wufu Song Yushao. The two sides faced the pressure of the 10,000 cavalry soldiers. During the formation, the young man holding the Sephora wood sword had his own registration number, and openly put on the sentence, "Delete Chen Ping'an is here." Chen Pingon twisted his wrist and produced an extra red wine gourd. After a sip of the wine, he gently placed the sword gourd on his knees. The first time I went out, I went to Desui with Lin Shui. The Mountain Cliff Academy in the territory. Exit from Yifuguan and enter Huang Tingua, which was still a member of the Gao clan of the Desui dynasty. The return route is still from Huang Tingua. However, they walked a plank road and entered the pass from Nyuzilan. At that time, the wind and snow were extreme. During the period, I ran into a team of frontier scouts. One of them stood out. He was a young pawn. It was probably in his early 20s at the time. I didn't quite understand why that rode his horse. It would be a resolute look. I only wanted to understand later. This team mistook me for an enemy spy at first, and it might be a trainer, so the most correct way at the time was to notify the neighborhood immediately. Those monks who accompanied the army of the Dolly Iron Cavalry, and the narrow road meeting in the wind and snow, the two sides are very likely to be born and die instantly. When I declare my identity, I will pass the customs clearance certificate issued by the Longquan County government to check my identity. After being correct, the rider sitting on horseback did not throw the pass to me, but got off the horse. After handing it back, he smiled and said something to me, roughly meaning the weather is terrible and the road is blocked by wind and snow. If you are worried about getting into trouble, you can go to their feng shui to take a rest, prepare food, and wait for the wind and snow to lighten up. A long-distance tourist who has walked through thousands of mountains and rivers tells me about this past that happened more than 20 years ago. Emperor Song he was very patient, not missing a word, but after listening, it was inevitable that he was a little bit suspicious. It's just such a small matter. Chen Pingon asked, "Does your majesty feel that things are too small and I can't believe it?" Song he nodded and said, "It's true, I would not believe it." Chen Pingon smiled and said, "Is it really a trivial matter?" Shaking his head, Chen Pingon asked and answered, "I don't think it is necessarily." As a Dolly cavalry, facing the gods on the mountain, he is not afraid of death. As a frontier scout, he is very concerned about the people of Dolly. This made the teenager of Huaihuang County, Longquan County, who had just started practicing boxing and martial arts, a kiln worker apprentice in Muping Lane, who had to worry about stepping on dirty bluestone slabs in Falu Street, Taoya Lane, got the first relatively clear impression. Chen Pingon carried the sword gourd and knocked on his knees. "In my opinion, there are 3 people who can turn the sky into the sky for Hauran." This kind of statement, even if it is a fact, would still seem out of place, and suspicion of being outspoken to any outsider. But speaking from Chen Pingan's mouth, it seemed extremely weighty, and it couldn't be more appropriate. In the past, everyone might think that Qi Jingchen's selection of an inconspicuous young man in Mud Bottle Alley and accepting apprentices on his behalf would be too childish. It is inevitable to ask why. But now everyone would think that Qi Jingchen had a very good vision for the close disciple who received such a sustainable incense for Wenxing's line in the Lizhu cave, which was close at hand. Empress Yumian was considerate, personally brought a jug of wine and a wine glass to Emperor Song He. Chen Pingon smiled and nodded to her. The Empress leaned sideways and gave a blessing. The woman in front of him, Sirujai. A Song daughter-in-law who is not liked by the Queen Mother Nanjan is definitely a good Empress Dolly. When Yumian walked back to the previous wine table, Song he smiled and said, "Yumian always feels that Mr. Qin is a gentleman who cultivates both internally and externally." Chen Ping'an almost mistakenly thought that Xiao Mo was possessed by the emperor in front of him, and asked, "Why do you see it?" "Song," he said, "there is a table at the gate of Luopa Mountain, which will provide tea for passers-by." Chen Ping'an laughed off. "I just said a little thing, Your Majesty, how can you learn? If this is the case, it would be no better than Xian Wei's trick of cheating money." Furthermore, the local woodcutter in Huaihuang County and the master potter who went into the mountains to find soil dare to sit down and drink tea. "Song," he continued, "in Yu Mian's words, you can see from small to big, you can see Mr. Chen's family style and the family style of Luopashan from the details. Wealthy people often have poor relatives and never return empty-handed. The home of loyalty. Passing by the high gate, the people will not like to avoid disasters, and deliberately walk through quickly. It is the gate of goodness." Chen Ping'an was taken aback for a moment, and nodded, "Your Majesty has a good helper." Shi Jiachuan craned her neck and quietly glanced at Chen Ping'an. Just one got up and then took a seat, as if Chen Ping'an had completely changed himself. "Don't wear a white hosta, a long green shirt and a pair of cloth shoes. The smile on his face is calm, and his aura is dusty. Probably that is the immortal Dao Qi that has been living in the mountains for a long time. In short, it wasn't the dark-skinned, bright-eyed straw shoe boy back then." Shi Jiachuan withdrew his gaze, glanced at his husband, and then at Lin Shui. Husband Bian Wenmao is already a man with slightly creamy temples. However, Lin Shui, who was about the same age, still had the appearance of a weak crown. Bian Wenmao's understanding of Lin Shui's wife only said that Lin Mumutu was a zealous person with facial paralysis. His father used to be a small official in the yamen of his hometown's Kiln Affairs Supervision and Construction Bureau. A small official, put it in the place, maybe even the lintel is glorious, but in the Nangxinfang where it is said that the official Lang official walks everywhere, it is not enough to see. Lin Shui joked softly, "Remember to look for the chair that Your Majesty is sitting on, and put it back and put it away, so it can be used as a family heirloom." Shi Jiachuan glared and wanted to say something, but Bian Wenmao stretched out her hand in a panic and pressed her arm hard. Shi Jiachuan stretched out a finger against her lips to remind Lin Shui not to say anything. Lin Shui smiled and nodded, and looked at the apologetic Bian Wenmao with sweat on his forehead. Bian Wenmao smiled bitterly. He was too nervous. Yu Mian looked at Lin Shui, a 40-year-old monk in the Yuanying realm who had served as a gift for the Chidu temple. "You must know that the supreme elder of Changchun Palace is the nascent Soul realm. Ruan Qiong, the chief worshipper of the Dai dynasty, was also the Yupu realm. There are many small vassal states in the south, and a golden celestial earth immortal can serve as the chief worshipper or even the national teacher. His Majesty the Emperor actually liked this person very much, and even deliberately let Lin Shui take charge of the ceremonial shrine to sacrifice to the Qing clerk. After 7 or 8 years of qualifications in the officialdom of the capital, he could once again be promoted as a minister of ceremonies. It may be because the younger generation of the old Liju Dongtian is too dazzling and shining. That makes Lin Shui not so conspicuous. Because there is Chen Ping'an in the Luopa Mountain, Lu Xianyang, the sword fairy who used to study in the Qin family in Nanpa Suozhou for 10 years, Ma Kushuan who is a blockbuster in Jinwu Mountain, and Zhao Yu, who has been to the Wucai world of Xing Department, and even more. There is Gu Kan, the mad disciple, who became the direct disciple of Jing Juzhong in Beidasheng. It seems to have overlooked this Lin Shui, who has always been going around in Aquarius Island. There is no unattainable mountain pedigree, no horrifying mountain fighting method, only year after year of concentrated study and silent cultivating, so Lin Shui's so-called famous moves in 2 capitals is actually far underestimated, because nowadays, Lin Shui is only regarded as the golden core immortal on the mountain. The aphorism of Yuaning is misleading. Shi Zhechuan was really curious. She leaned over, put a hand to cover her mouth, lowered her voice, and asked Lin Shou in a low voice, "What is your Majesty talking to Qin Pingan?" Lin Shi said, "I can't hear you either." The mausoleum guard who cultivated in the mausoleum of Dei Emperor set a ban on mountains and rivers that cut off the heavens and the earth. Shi Zhechuan said in a daze, "Qin Pingan is so courageous, and chatting with your Majesty is so casual. Is this considered a chattering?" Lin Shou smiled and nodded. Not brave enough to be the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jinqi. Besides, if Qin Pingan was timid, he would like Ningyao. Shi Zhechuan hesitated. Lin Shi said in his heart, "Don't worry, no matter whether the talk is over there or not, it's a good thing for you anyway. Qin Pingan has always done things safely." With Qin Pingan's temper, if Emperor Song he dared to anger his family, the consequences would only be more serious than turning his face on the spot with Qin Pingan. It would be possible to go back to the palace and lift the table directly. But I believe that with today's mind and energy, it will not be so small. Lin Shi still doesn't know, but Qin Pingan has already turned the table with Queen Mother Nanzhan. Shi Zhechuan nodded. Whether it was Lin Shi, who had been studying for many years at the school in her hometown school, or Qin Pingan, who later became Li Baoping's little uncle, she felt that they were trustworthy. This is a female instinct. Xiao Mo and Xian Wei did not go to the side's house to attend the wedding banquet, but looked for a nearby alley. Xiao Mo stood against the wall, Xian Wei squatted aside and took a pot of wine. He bought it at his own expense. There was no way. He couldn't afford to pay for the money, and could not drink the wedding wine, so he could only do it on his own. It doesn't matter, anyway, in the future, I will be a cultivator of immortality, and my pockets are filled with immortal money. What are the yellow and white things under the mountain such as gold and silver? It is too tacky and detrimental to immortality. Xian Wei looked at the busy traffic outside Bian's house, and said, "Guanglu Temple Qing, the official is not small, not to mention the Beijing official of your Dali dynasty. According to the rules of Aquarius Island today, the local officials of Dali are better than the civil servants of the vassals. For the first grade, the Jingguan must be the next higher grade. If this is the small country of the vassal in the south, it must not be the leader of the great 9 Qin Yamen, or at least a master of the 6 ministers. Master Chow is indeed on the mountain, and the friends you know are either rich or noble. There is no such thing as a friend." Xiao Mo looked at the immortal Wei, who looked up and drank like a cow, and couldn't help asking, "Do you like drinking so much?" Xian Wei put down the hip flask, hiccuped, patted his stomach and wiped his mouth. "I don't like it much." Then Xian Wei raised the jug in his hand and grinned, "Am I drinking? I drink money." These years of displacement, desolation, and desperate hunger and coldness. The key to a full meal and 3 meals is to rely on scams and abductions to make money, otherwise you really want to be a beggar. Every time you make a move, you have to be frightened. After all, prison food is not delicious. Now following Master Chow, I can't sleep if I have a place to eat bread when I am hungry, and drink when I am thirsty. This has already made Xian Wei cry for happiness. Xian Wei remembered something. "Xiao Mo, tell me the truth, why does the old real person from the Jingqing Road Jinya office call Master Chow, Qin Shanju?" Xiao Mo said, "Chow Mo is a pseudonym for the sun who walks in the rivers and lakes." Little Mo, Xian Wei took a sip of his wine and said in the same tone as Chow Mo, "I want to ask you what the mountain said. Is there a Xianjia mountain, a fairy cave, a dragon entrenched, and a bird screaming forever? Exotic flowers and weeds all over the mountains and plains, treasures of nature and land that can be seen everywhere?" Since Chow Mo is a cultivator who knows the skills of the immortal family, he can enter and leave at will at the Taoist office and the translation bureau of the Beijing Normal School. He is also a mountain lord, and he must be no different. Don't weigh, how thick is this thigh that I am holding? How high is the backer that I found by my ability? Xiao Mo lowered his head and glanced at Xian Wei. Because he can keenly perceive the other's heartstrings, this guy always has such a whimsical mind. Xiao Mo explained, the son bought a few hills in his hometown. Xian Wei asked, the top of the mountain. How big? Xiao Mo said, I've never been to the son's hometown. Leaving the capital this time, you will soon be able to see the mountain with your own eyes. Xian Wei said. Xiao Mo asked, I will follow my son to go up the mountain and cultivate the Tao. What do you want to do? It must be, how could it not be? Xian Wei stubbornly cut the railroad. We must capture the fox, the charm and the ghosts, the goddess will dream, and we will swim in the fairyland. Xiao Mo regretted asking this question. Listening to Xian Wei's rants, he was summed up by this guy as 30 things that must be done after cultivating to become an immortal. Xiao Mo couldn't listen anymore and couldn't help reminding him. Said, Xian Wei, have you ever heard of a nobleman's speech late? Flower seems to be the most troublesome, but sure can't be the most pleasant. Xian Wei stopped talking angrily. Suddenly his expression changed slightly, and said anxiously, Master Chao's hilltop is fine, it's better not to be near Piyin Mountain. Xiao Mo asked, why is this? Gao Feng Liang pierced Yunshan Mountain, two-sleeved breeze Wei Shan Jun. Xian Wei slapped his hands with his hip flask, and said with emotion, Shemo, you haven't heard of this? Even I have heard of the great name of Wei Shan Jun at Piyin Mountain. It is said that there will be several night banquets a year. The fairy masters on the mountains, the city gods, and the gods of the mountains and the gods of the water in the entire Beiyue boundary, all of them smashed the pots and sold iron, fastened their belts and lived their lives. They were miserable, and they were just a big rooster, passing by Piyin Mountain. Only the next 2 eggs can go. Xian Wei has been traveling north through hardships over the years, and has nothing to do with the mountain, nor has he ever been to a Xianjia ferry. As for those fairy houses on the mountains with clouds and mists, don't even think about it. Xian Wei only deals with poor mountains and bad waters all the way. It means that his general rhetoric can only be heard from the rivers and lakes under the mountain, so you can imagine the famous and good reputation of Weibo and Pianshan. Xiao Mo was quite surprised when he heard that, even if the hearsay of Xian Weido is a bit exaggerated and moist, even if you make a half-fold. So Xiao Mo thought about it. To be on the safe side, it seems that he had to prepare it early. It's a gift, so as not to make a stingy evaluation on Wei Shanjun's side. It is really embarrassing for his son to stand with such a neighbor who is not an easy generation. Xian Wei looked at a place on the street and said, Xiao Mo, look at that coachman. He looks like an old and strong trainer. Look at the bulging muscles of the 2 arms. I guess I can punch down. The table pierces, hits people, and you can't spit out a bottle of blood. Xiao Mo, although you are a halfway immortal master, after all, you are not as accustomed to the world as I am. When you encounter this kind of person in the future, you must be careful. Be careful, detour and behave well. An old coachman stood next to a carriage, dozing with his arms around his chest. He noticed the sight from the other side of the alley, and the old coachman opened his eyes. The guy squatting and drinking is a Lu Jin realm trainer. But the monk in the yellow hat and blue shoes seems to be the worship of Luopashan. He just recorded the file at the Ministry of Justice and became the 3rd-class worship of Dali. The name is Shizhu and the name is strange. Anyway, it was Zhang Xinface, who had accompanied some guy to the palace before, and made a lot of noise over there, and his realm should not be too low. The old coachman intends to look at his supernatural powers to find out to see if he can identify the general roots and depths of his actions. I just took a look, what's wrong? If you don't want to be seen, don't go out. Xiao Mo smiled in his heart, Senior spied on his popular machine without authorization. This is not in compliance with the rules, right? The divisions of the ancient lay department, in the old heavenly court, were quite powerful. They were responsible for driving the sea and moving the mountains, moving the four seasons, raising and lowering the yin and yang, holding the balance of things, and the division of health and death. In particular, the lay department's division of investigation, who is responsible for the implementation of penalties, whether the victim is a dereliction of duty, an illegal land immortal, or a genus of a chaotic dragon spirit, shall first cut off his god, then examine his shape, and let his shape disappear. As a result, the corpse was shattered and the primordial spirit was broken. The old coachman was slightly surprised. It was not a fuel-efficient lamp. Now that the other party was wary, the old coachman did not continue to use his natal supernatural powers, but casually asked, "Sword repair? Where did it come from? The Central Earth Confucian Temple Ration Chin Pingan's guardian? Or did it come from the Sword Chi Great Wall whose reputation is not obvious?" The criminal officer's line. "I am indeed a sword repairman. As for where I come from, since I am not familiar with the predecessors at the moment, let alone friends, I won't let my heart go, so I won't talk more." Xiao Mo still smiled. "It's just that the troubled seniors respect my son. It's best not to call him by his first name, such as Mr. Chen or Mr. Chen Shanju. It will be fine." The old coachman was amused. He was so agitated, and he was stinking to learn from whom. Even the little baby with the surname Chin seemed to be chatting with himself. He wouldn't be so silly. Besides, when did an upper five realm sword repairer lose so much? What can't you do? Go to be a doggy follower for a young man in his 40s. However, the old coachman is now much more cautious in his words and actions, and he tentatively asked, "The fortune teller of Luz was cut by you?" Xiao Mo asked, listening to what seniors mean, "Do you want to be familiar with me? If you want to get acquainted with Jian Xiu, of course, you can only ask the sword and lead the sword." The old coachman almost ignored his temper. The guy in the yellow hat and blue shoes, look at that warm-hearted, speaks in no rush, for some reason, always feels that this person is more owed than Chen Pingon. Just thinking that he had just cleaned up the old Xiu at the flower shed of the Huishan temple earlier, the old coachman took a deep breath, stopped speaking, and closed his eyes again. Xiao Mo asked with a smile, "When did the senior's temper become so good?" The old coachman turned a deaf ear. Xiao Mo stretched out his hand to support the yellow hat on his head, and smiled. "In the early years, the Jade Hub Zhangguan Division, thunder and lightning, so magnificent, deafening, and the heart trembling when you see." The old coachman suddenly opened his eyes, staring at the young monk who opened the old calendar, and asked each other in his heart, like thunder, "Say, where are you sacred?" Xiao Mo smiled. "He's just an unknown little person." It was just that he had asked about the sword with the chief officials of Leibu, one mansion and 2 houses. Xianwei got up and ran into the alley quickly, but he didn't forget to turn his head and reminded, Xiaomo, that old coachman seems to be staring at you, don't fight, go out, and make money." The old coachman sighed and closed his eyes again. "I can't move the old yellow." At the Bien's wedding banquet lobby, Chen Pingon was a little helpless. Today, he seemed to be forced to become the host here, sending out the most distinguished couple of the Dali dynasty outside the lobby. It's just that Chen Pingon stopped after crossing the threshold, and there was no need to send it to the street beyond the mansion gate. Yu Mian smiled and asked, "Dare to ask Mr. Chen, these cloth shoes are sewn by Ning Jianxian?" Chen Pingon smiled kindly, shook his head and said, "It was given to me by an old mother. Although there are more than 20 pairs of cloth shoes, I still need to save somewhere. The only flaw is that I can't bear to wear them on rainy days." After that, Bien Wen Mao, men, women and children of the 2 families, of course had to follow along. The emperor song. He chatted with the border temple Qing of Guanglu Temple all the way. The Empress Yu Mian had a gentle expression, and she was congratulating the newlywed couple. Lin Shui stood at the door, accompanying Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "Still the same way?" "I have nothing to say after seeing your father." Lin Shui nodded. "It's good to get used to it. Every family has its cupboard. Each time the father and son meet, it usually does not exceed 3 sentences. There was only one exception. When Lin Shui was about to take up the post of Dadu Temple Zhu, the father who had been practicing for most of his life at the public school, only said a few more words. Chen Pingan has always admired Lin Shui. "Even if I have seen many well-deserved Taoist geniuses, I still feel that Lin Shui's Taoism is clear and does not lose anyone." When the group traveled far to study, Chen Pingan wore straw sandals and a hatchet at his waist, and was responsible for clearing the way and vigil. Little Treasure Bottle is innocent and innocent, whimsical. At that time, Cui Dongshan was weird and absurd. Lin Shui is serious, Yu Lu is indifferent. Thank you for your perseverance. As for Li Huai, just do it at will. Anyway, he's good at nesting. Zhu He has a stable temperament, and Zhu Lu is arrogant and willful. Of course, there is also the alien who Chen Pingan was curious about, whether he could beat Zhu He or not. This is Chen Pingan's first long trip. When returning home, there were more girls in pink skirts and children in Tsingyi, and on the snowy plank road, they also met Bai Zhe and Hume Qinying. Shi Jiachuan was the first to come back here. She carried her skirt, rushed back all the way, stood on tiptoe, and slapped Chen Pingan's shoulder vigorously. Although I don't know what the Emperor's Majesty came to talk with Chen Pingan specifically, but Shi Jiachuan was smart when he was a child. Before he went to the school, he would plan to help settle the accounts in his own shop. A monk on the mountain who can make His Majesty the Emperor's main action salute. A guy sitting next to Emperor Dali, who dared to cross his legs. This is unimaginable. Among the people of the same age in the town, Lin Shui, Azza on the mountain, and Ma Kushuan in Xinghua Lane, are very good. The most promising officer is of course Xiao Yu, who is the chief minister of the criminal ministry. To do business, it must be Dong Shui Jing, otherwise he can do business with the children of Shangzhou Kingdom like Chao Gingxin and Yuan Jingding, and be friends. Before that, Shi Jiachuan only regarded Chen Pingan as the rich man on the mountain, and at best he was similar to Dong Shui Jing. But since they are friends, of course, the better they are. Bian Wenmao was frightened by his wife's disrespectful actions, and his face paled. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "It's okay." Lin Shui dismantled the platform and said, "It's okay. How can Lord Chen let me deal with it?" Shi Jiachuan grinned and said, "I knew this. The price of the 2 shops in Qilong Alley in my house had to be at least doubled back then. It's really a bargain." Bian Wenmao pulled his wife's sleeve. "On Mr. Chen's side, don't be so rude." Chen Pingan looked at Bian Wenmao and explained with a smile, "Bian Xiqing, the last time Shi Jiachuan returned home, I happened to be traveling abroad. If I was not in my hometown, I missed it with you. This is the first time I have traveled in so many years. Beijing, so I didn't meet until today. Don't be surprised. I bought the New Year's Eve shop and Chao Tu shop in Qilong Alley at a low price from the Shi family. This favor is great. Today Chen Pingan's elementary money is 2 small summer coins, which are calculated according to the market price on the mountain, which is 200,000 taels of silver. There may be an extra 1 to 20,000 taels of silver. Price. Of course, it is not that Chen Pingan can't come up with 2 guyu money, but it is not appropriate. Bian Wenmao hurriedly laughed and said, "I have often heard Jiachuan talk about Mr. Chen these years. I saw him today and he was well deserved." Now Bian Wenmao works at the Guanglu Temple in Zhejiang, serving as the senior of Guanglu Temple. The official is not big, but he is in charge of affairs and holds real power. In his early years, Bian Wenmao was born in the second-grade Jinshi. After he left the Imperial Academy, he had a lot of toss and turns inside the Beijing Yamen. First, he went to the Imperial College and served as an assistant in law. Before the temple, he had been a Fengli Lang of Taichung Temple. Bian Wenmao's promotion in the officialdom was unhappy, but it was fairly stable. The only problem is that he didn't serve in the 6 government offices. In this life, he was a Shaoqing of Guanglu Temple. Bian Wenmao was certain of it. But if he would one day be in charge of Guanglu Temple, he did not dare to have any extravagant expectations. Li Huai told Chen Pingan about this Bian Wenmao, a capital official with eyes on his forehead. He didn't look down on the local buns in these small towns. Everyone liked to answer the question, but he still treated Shi Zhechuan. Not bad. Shi Zhechuan smiled brightly, secretly stretched out a hand, shook it gently, and signaled to Chen Pingan that there was no such thing at all. Just listen to the kind words of her husband. As soon as Chen Pingan and Lin Shou left the Bian's house, Lin Shi asked, "Would you like to sit in my house? My father was born in a kiln and your elders are well connected, so I guess I have some chat with you." Chen Pingan shook his head, and said earnestly, "Shi, the old man is no longer young, don't look at your father without a smiling face on your side, as long as you become a relative, then you will not be concerned about sons and daughters, and other generations of kissing. It doesn't make sense to say that your father's smiling face in one day has been kept for more than a year on your side. If you don't believe it, we can make a bet, a small bet on eaching, just 2 small summer money." Lin Shou smiled and his lips moved slightly. At this moment, the silence was better than the sound, and he gave Chen Pingan a roll. Chen Pingan took out a booklet from his sleeve and said with heart, "Mr. Qi promoted the Lei Ju, and there are still some discrepancies with the Longhushan Tianshifu. By chance, I learned a little bit of fur and compiled it. This booklet, your qualifications are good, after reading through it, see if you can make progress in every possible way." Lin Shui slipped into his sleeve and laughed angrily, "If you give a gift, just give it, don't say it's like receiving a gift." Chen Pingan tut and said, "You have a face to say about me. You, the gift recipient, are like a gift." Lin Shui asked, "Is this back?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "I will leave the capital soon, either today or tomorrow, and then I need to rush to Tonggishao immediately to establish the next festival. The specific time has not yet been determined, roughly at the end of this winter or the beginning of spring next year. Anyway, go if you have time, and forget it if you don't have time." Lin Shi said, "If I can't get to Tonggishao, you can ask Dong Shuijing to count my good money together. Anyway, he has a lot of money in his pocket. The in Qian's eyes, he likes to be a rich man. Apart from having no ability to make money, he deserves to be a bachelor." Chen Pingan held back a laugh. Lin Shui is generally not like this. The exception is Dong Shuijing's side. The reason is very simple. The 2 former classmates both missed Li Lu when they were young, and became rivals for each other. In the end, neither of them turned out to be the end of the game. Li Lu did not marry. When Li Lu married a foreigner, Lin Shui and Dong Shuijing now meet each other again. It's a different kind of dislike to see each other. Probably both of them have both on their foreheads. I was put on a label by the other party, written in 2 big characters, waste. Lin Shui was about to leave, and looked at each other with Chen Ping and Chen Pingan and Xiao Mo said in their hearts, they told him to take Xianwei to follow them and walk to Chunshan Academy together. On the carriage, Yu Mian asked, "What did Mr. Chen say?" Emperor Song he rubbed his eyebrows, he said that next time he passes by the capital, he will give an exact explanation. Yu Mian stretched out his fingers, gently twisted the emperor's sleeves, squinted and smiled, and said charmingly, "Don't get sulking." Song he laughed blankly, holding her hand backhand. Envy Mandarin ducks but not immortals. Yu Mian smiled as usual, lowered his body, and pressed his cheek to the back of the emperor's hand. She just didn't know the emperor's palms were sweaty. Obviously, after she sent her hip flask and wine glasses, the two parties did not talk easily. Chunshan Academy. The old scholar waited for his disciple Qin Pingan, before passing on his disciple Lin Shui. Lin Shui is very good, but he is still not good at bachelor. The old scholar had a very good impression of this college. This was not here last time, and he recognized a distant nephew named Zhou Jiagu at no cost. The old scholar was waiting at the gate of Chunshan Academy. He will soon return to the Qinta Confucian Temple. The old man held his hands and looked up at the plaque in the college. Spring Mountain. The words are well written, and the names are also well obtained. The spring of Qi Jingchen, the mountain of Chui Dongshan. Chen Pingan and Lin Shui fell into shape and saluted each other. The old scholar turned around and asked with a smile, "Pingan, Shuqi, tell me, which one of my studies do you like the most?" Chen Pingan's answer is to encourage learning. Lin Shui's reply is on Tianluan. The old scholar stroked his beard and smiled, "They are all excellent." The three of them walked into the academy together, and the old scholar slowly said, "The gentleman said, learning is impossible. Knowing the difference between heaven and man, it can be said to be very human. The stars follow the rotation, the sun and the moon pass the bamboo, the four eras are imperial, the yin and yang are greatly transformed, and the wind and rain are beneficial. The sky sees its bright, the earth sees its light, and the gentleman cherishes its pure and complete. The change of heaven and earth, the transformation of yin and yang, and the rarer things. The strangeness is also possible, but the fear is also not. Therefore, a gentleman must choose his hometown when he travels." Shi, are there any doubts about Tianluan? There are several places. Okay, there is no doubt about reading, it is equal to the intestines, we just walk and talk, you ask and I answer. By the way, Shi, if you encounter similar academic problems in the future, you can send a letter to the Gongdalin. As for the practice, if you encounter the problem, you can directly ask Jingsheng Shiping. Taoism is one way. I can help you transfer it to Fu Lu Yushuan or Zhao Tianshi, but these two are not too busy now, and may have to reply to you later. But if you encounter a bigger problem. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "As long as I am short of money, I will definitely not charge interest. When I have money and when I will pay back, I will definitely not call for debts." The old show will smile heartily. Look, listen. What is a proud disciple? Lin Shui stretched out his hand, "Bring it." Chen Pingan was stunned, "What?" Lin Shui said, "To break the bottleneck of yuaning, I need a few foreign treasures. I estimated that I would need 100 grains of rain money. I am really worried. I came to Beijing this time to raise money." Chen Pingan leaned forward and looked at his husband. The old scholar coughed and looked ahead. The scenery of Chunshan Academy was extremely beautiful. Chen Pingan slapped Lin Shui's hand. "Wait a few days before I return to Luopa Mountain and ask the accountant Wei Wenlong for money. It will definitely not delay your business." Lin Shui put his hand away and asked with a smile, "Dang Shanju, don't you have any private money?" Chen Pingan said awe-inspiringly, "What kind of private money does a man want?" The old scholar immediately understood why he was in the line of Wenqing, and the close disciple alone was able to find a daughter-in-law. This comprehension is hard to get. Lin Shui asked a few questions about scholarship. Although there were not many problems, he was an old scholar who was regarded as the ancestor by seniority. He spoke very carefully and took half an hour. After that, Lin Shi left the academy and said that he was going home. One trip. Chen Pingan said in his heart, Shi, if you need someone else to protect the road before the retreat breaks the border in the future, you must remember to say hello to me. As long as I am not in another continent at the time, I will protect you. How about? Lin Shi made a rare joke. I am so polite with the little uncle, that's all. Chen Pingan reminded, 1 yard goes to 1 yard. When you enter the upper 5 realms, you have to return the cost of 100 grain rain coins. I make an exception and give you a 20% discount. Lin Shou smiled and said nothing. Chen Pingan felt that the matter was suspended. Returning to the mountain gate the same way, Lin Shi Yufeng returned to the capital. During the period, I met a young man with a yellow hat and blue shoes, and a young Taoist priest who looked around and curious. The old scholar took out a kit from his sleeve and handed it to Chen Ping, and Chen Pingan received the kit in a bewildered manner, and opened it to see that he was surprised that there was the colorful knot of ant fongs inside. It is refined from the lifeblood of the gods of flowers of Baiwa Fudi. The old Xiuzai smiled and said, why don't you get married? Senior Ant Fong asked you to hand it over to the flower master of Baiwa Fudi. The only requirement is to let the December flower of Fudi come here with her sincerely. Apologize. Ant Fong means that this thing is rare. You can't run errands in vain at that time. You have to ask Fudi for the title of Taishang Kaching. If you don't give it, you don't give it away. There are many flower gods in the 100 flowers, and the December flower is the highest. Among them, the blessed land flower owner is the head. After that, the 4 life masters who are responsible for the 4 seasons of flowers bloom, and then the 7 flower gods who hold the moon. Empress. In December, the goddess of flowers, each has his own natal guest. This position will certainly not be left empty. In addition to that, there will be more senior guests, but most of them are wishful thinking of the goddess of flowers. For example, Bai is the grandest guest of Peony, but Bai will not travel to Bai Huafu as a guest. As for the grand guest of the entire 100 flowers fortune land, after the catastrophe of the blessed land of violent winds, anger, and withering flowers, it has been hanging in the air for thousands of years. What is waiting is who can retrieve this colorful knot from the Feng Jiama Zi. Chen Pingan said, Sir, I know how Senior Ant Feng's speaking style is. I can help deliver things and talk, but the grand guest of this whole blessed land, even if 100 flowers and fortune take the initiative to give it to me, I won't want it. Of. The old scholar smiled, and did not persuade him for the time being. If the negotiation is not made, the god of fortune flower is unwilling to come here to admit mistakes. You have to promise Ant Feng to protect the flower pickers on the mountain from being killed. When I turn around, I will send a letter to the flower master empress, personally teach the tips and tricks. For example, let them accept the colored knots first, and then suddenly change their words. If you, Mr. Chen, don't agree to the guest, you won't go to Ao Pingzhou to ask Ant Feng to apologize. Chen Pingan hesitated to speak but stopped. The old Xiuzai whispered, don't worry too much about Liang and Zui idiot. Because the kid Li Huai said something unintentional when he was hanging around with Taoist Nin, saying, my brother Liang is not a bachelor. As for the invincible swordsman Zua, he still has to teach him. I have a few swordsmanship skills. Chen Pingan's face was embarrassed and said, Sir, this is also true. The old scholar smiled and said, just wait and see. Chen Pingan breathed a sigh of relief. The old scholar turned his head and waved vigorously and shouted, Shema Shema, this way. After hearing this, Xiaomo asked Xianwei to stroll around by himself first, and came to Mr. Wenxing alone. For some reason, seeing this young Wenxing, Xiaomo always felt like he was getting along with an elder. Probably because Wenxing is highly knowledgeable and shows old age. The old scholar said, Brother Xiaomo, I am going to return to the Confucian temple soon, so this close disciple will be taken care of by you. Xiaomo nodded and said, Mr. Wenxing, I can't guarantee that there will be no accidents, but I can guarantee that if there is any accident, Xiaomo will definitely stand next to the sun, and the sword will not be slow. Good. This is absolutely domineering. The old scholar smiled at hearing, and gave a thumbs up. It's worthy of the little Mo brother whom I met and hit it off. Later, I will introduce you to Bai Yi, Dao Chang's son, and Tianshi Zhao. They are all my best friends. No way, me. There are not many friends and there are only so few people with good swordsmanship. Xiao Mo Zui thanks. The old scholar hurriedly held Xiao Mo's arm. I will return to Central Earth Shenzhou this time, and I will talk to the old-fashioned Confucian temple gang in advance. In the future, Brother Xiao Mo will travel across the continent in Haoran, so I don't need to report to the Confucian temple. Xiao Mo thought for a while, but declined the matter. Mr. Wenxing's kindness accepted it, but I think this matter is still going according to the rules. Xiao Mo shouldn't make Mr. Wenxing and the son embarrassed about this kind of thing. The old scholar gently patted Xiao Mo on the shoulder, and then helped tidy up his clothes, just like an old man sees a young junior who is about to leave his hometown. The old man smiled and murmured, acceptable, understanding, 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 Xiao Mo is very kind. Xiao Mo smiled shyly, a little overwhelmed. Chen Pingon smiled and said, when the saints and heroes meet, when it comes to human sentiment, the sword will sing. Sword of Coming Chapter 888. Chun Shan Academy. The old scholar has traveled across the continent and returned to the Chinta Confucian temple. If you don't go back, I guess the Confucian temple will have to come over and block the door and curse the street. Before leaving, the old scholar had a few words with the young Taoist priest. Xianwei's sorrow comes from it. Is this Master Chao's husband? The old gentleman is good-looking, but the problem is that the other party seems to be almost as poor as himself. Xiao Mo and Chen Pingon walked side by side in front, saying, Your Majesty the Emperor, you can still pretend to be calm at the wine table, but when you leave, when you get on the carriage, your heartstrings become violent. It seems the sun brought him a lot of pressure. Chen Pingon smiled and said, It's just talking about it and chatting casually. Smart people like to think more about what they don't have, good or bad. For example, I asked the Emperor, His Majesty, whether the literati discussed politics or not. The monk acted, Do you want to ask your heart? Nowadays, there is no national teacher Cui Yang. Those of the Song family who came from Weixiang in Huaxian County of the Dayu dynasty are taking the lead in the clan's mansion. These people are the most vigorous, jumping on the edge of the temple. Your Majesty, don't care. The Dali dynasty once erected a country's laws and regulations on a mountain of monuments, and a continent and a half of mountains and rivers south of Dadu and Dadu. In the past, the Dali vassals, according to the agreement, were able to restore the country by virtue of their respective military exploits, so some countries began to demolish their borders. For those stone monuments on the mountain, the Dali court abide by the rules and never intervene in other people's housework. It is better to let the officials from the Honghu Temple in the capital city or the Ministry of Ritual of the accompanying capital give a reminder or two. Another example is that there are many officials in the accompany capital at the moment. What do you think, Your Majesty, when it comes to the relocation of the capital? In fact, many issues are not complicated. For example, when other countries go to the monument, the Dali dynasty is no longer a suzerain state, so what can I care about? It's just that Chen Pingon deliberately started with a trivial matter before, so that Emperor Song he would think more about everything afterwards. Moreover, the Emperor's Majesty is too eager to use Chen Pingon to serve as the teacher of the Great Li State, once and for all. Middle-earth Confucian Temple, on Izhou Mountain, Dali Companion Capital, King Songmu, Beiju Luzhou in the north, Tonggishao in the south. It's too simple to think again. Return to the capital together. Chen Pingan sent 3 letters, a letter from Feijian to his home in Luopa Mountain, informing him that he was about to return to his hometown there. I also sent it to Lu Jinglong, the sword sect of the Taihui Emperor, saying that the next sect is about to be created. You must participate in the celebration. The specific time is to be determined. Just when you cross continents and go south, remember to stay at the Dali capital city and give pointers to Han Zujin's formation. Lol. This hometown is a female formation teacher from Qing Tan's blessed land. His background and mountain origin are by no means simple. Among the monks of the earthly branches, Chen Pingan is actually the 2 most optimistic about her and Guling, not even Yuan Huajing and Song Su, 2 swordsmen who are very hopeful to be among the 5 realms. Rely on intuition. Also, the last time Changpu had a drink, Guan Yiran used the Inkstone Services Department to provoke a conversation, so Chen Pingan had to remind Dong Shuijing that he had to be careful of some jealous family elder brothers in the capital. Dong Shuijing's business methods can be called 5-8 flower gates. Among them is the matter of covering hilltops. They quietly monopolize the flowers, jade, wood and even spring water, etc., and then spend money to let the various mountain mansions help make famous, and then distribute them to with a few or a dozen buyers. Dong Shuijing himself is often not involved in direct sales. Chao Gingxin, Yuan Jingding, Fu Yu, Wu Yuan. Everyone who has been an official in Longzhou has a share. Not talking about the mountain sects, just talking about the old Longqing Sun family and Fan family in the south. Anyway, as long as the friends introduced by Chen Pingan, they all seem to have become Dong Shuijing's friends. In Dong Shuijing's words, I am just a serious trader, only earning money from rich people. It is estimated that there are not a few private ferry boats and Xianjia ferry boats that belong to Dong Shuijing under the names of others. Dong Banqing. It's almost Dong Banzhou. It is hard to imagine that this poor boy who dropped out of school in the past years in Lizhu Cave started his business by selling wontons and glutinous rice wine. It's just that no matter how rich it is, it doesn't prevent Dong Shuijing from being a waste in Lin Shui's eyes. For the same reason, no matter how high Lin Shui's cultivation realm is, in Dong Shui's well-bore, he is just a counselor. How useful is your Lin Shui studying? Isn't it a mess with yourself all the way? In the evening, Zhou Haijing moved a stool and sat in the yard to enjoy the coolness, holding an exquisite fan embroidered with ladies and butterflies, shaking it gently, and the hair on the temples and the neckline of the placket were fluttering. King Luo's small fan is fluttering with fireflies. She is very elegant, everyone is like this. The 2 city boys at the door, they are determined to rely on her Aunt Zhou, a foreigner, or a practicing family. Aren't they just the heroines of the master storyteller who play the world and play the world? A handsome young man named Wang Yan turned his back to the yard, sitting at the door, holding his cheek in a daze. The tall young man sat leaning at the door, smiling, wishing that he could learn a fairy technique that could become the fan in Aunt Zhou's hand. Zhou Haijing bends both fingers, pointing to Gao Yu. Gao Yu grinned and said, Sister Zhou, when will I find a brother-in-law, Wang Yan, and I can help set up the wine and collect the money? Zhou Haijing said lazily, it's easy to ask for priceless treasures, but it's rare to have a lover. Gao Yu laughed and said, Sister Zhou, what do you think of me? Why don't you just marry me? I will definitely give you up in the future. Zhou Haijing glanced at the young man. I think you can still get along with Wang Yan, good brother. You will suffer a little today, and he will suffer a little tomorrow. No one will suffer anyway. She is crippled with high oil, and Aunt Zhou is really hurting her words this time. In fact, these 2 teenagers are both poor boys with fathers and no mothers. It is impossible to say that it is decent, but it is crooked, in fact, there is no bad water in the stomach. The age of the teenager is still uncertain. When I see a lady with a bulging chest and a thin waist, I can't control my eyes. I think it's normal to take a few more glances. It's just that a teenager is a teenager after all. I really want to meet a girl I like. I guess I just hold hands during the day and can't sleep for half the night. But if a man sees a nice-looking woman, he has to think about where the bed is. It's just like the first encounter with a high oil, who secretly likes a childhood sweetheart, meets on the road. How dare to talk about it, just look at it and be full. On the contrary, that Wan Yen is more calm, and he is more mindful at a young age. If you were born in a wealthy portal and could read books, you might really be a promising seed for reading. It's just that the reincarnation is the most involuntary. Zhou Haijing was absent-minded, listening to the two teenagers at the door, turning to talk about the strange and interesting things that happened recently in the capital, such as the two Jianghu sects. They had a fierce fight on the Gourd Street at night, and the nearby medical clinic these past 2 days. The business is very good. There are also two immortal masters who walked out of the deep mountains and old forests. They had a firm fight. Among them was a legendary sword fairy who was very angry. I heard that the old sword fairy stood there that night. On the street, there was a long roar from the sky, the roof shattered, so many roof tiles shattered, the leaves fell to the ground, and then opened his mouth so as to spit out. A sword pill that kept spinning and not falling to the ground came out, swish, just it turned into a golden rope a few miles long, and dragged another master back to the ground. The storyteller on the Jiaobei Bridge the next day said, that sword must be based on seniority. He has to be regarded as an uncle from a different line of his clan. At that time, there were good people who smashed the scene and asked the storyteller, "Why did you become a storyteller?" The old man was not surprised. He sighed and looked lonely. Suddenly he was shocked and said that he was indeed a fairy. Going astray, training is abolished. Regardless of the spectators and audience who were full of applause at the time, it is said that several ancestral secret books were sold on the same day. Of course I want to buy high oil, but the price is not agreed. It is too expensive. The storyteller offered 3 taels of silver, saying that this is still a matter of high oil. Otherwise, don't talk about it. High oil and no lard to be a heartbreaker, thinking of money is crazy, 3 coins are pretty much the same. It's still ancestral is only a day or 2, right? It's just that in the words of this moment, the tall young man still feels a little regretful, and feels that he might really miss a fate of the immortal family. Zhou Haijing rolled his eyes when he heard it. Sword fairy. The man in the green shirt you saw earlier is the real sword fairy on the mountain. She curled her lips. Yupujing was really scared to death. If this is an interested flower-picking thief, what should I do? Can't beat and beat. The other party also claims to be in charge of the earthly branch for a while, and she is a big girl with yellow flowers. Isn't it that every day shouldn't call the earth ineffective? Zhou Haijing is naturally not stupid. In the previous scene of drinking water and chatting with Qin Pingan, there were many things that both sides had hidden and tucked away, which was human nature. Qin Pingan hoped that she would take the initiative to find him, and the two sides could openly make a deal. The other party can't talk about being bully or even very sincere. When doing a business, the buyer has a clear sense of belonging, but if he can bear the greed, he can avoid being asked by the seller to sit on the floor and raise the price. In the same business, Qin Pingan, the buyer, is forced to buy. How can he compare with the seller? Zhou Haijing actually had a dim sum at the time. After all, the status of the old man in the rivers and lakes is not low, especially in the battle of the battlefield. Yu Hong is good at selling fame and fishing reputation, and has earned a lot of goodwill from the mountains, especially when Yu Hong is in the Dali dynasty. She found a first-class amulet, which made her feel more troublesome. If you want to take revenge, Fashitang and several martial arts must kill everyone and live by yourself at the same time. It's just that Zhou Haijing is accustomed to going through the rivers and lakes single-handedly after all, and she really doesn't want to be extravagant, sloppy, and watch others wince. It's not her style of acting. 223 lives, one life for one life. Zhou Haijing doesn't want one more life than Yuhong, but he can't have one less life. In the twilight, at the corner of the alley, a romantic and suave strange man walked out. This is Su Lang's second visit to Zhou Haijing. He has just obtained a secret order from the Department of Criminal Justice. He will soon leave Beijing to settle in the south of Aquarius. He is responsible for secretly building a Jianghu school in the old Baishuang dynasty. Later, if the scale of this sect meets the requirements of the big plan within the Department of Penalty, Su Lang will be able to retreat and be promoted to second-class worship. For Su Lang, it's not a chore, there is no place in life. As a visiting ceremony, Su Lang brought a pot of xianjia fermented rice on the mountain today, and a paper-wrapped crispy pork as a snack. Gao Yu pointed his eyes, saw the uninvited guest who was out of place, and stabbed his friend with his elbow, is also a master. Compared to the man in the green shirt who wore cloth shoes a few days ago, the man in front of him was hanging a piece of green bamboo at his waist and carrying a sword. He obviously looked more like a master. Wan Yan turned his head and looked around, and said, like. Gao Yu immediately patted his and got up, trotted to the master, and asked, "Who is this master looking for?" In fact, the teenager guessed with his butt, and he knew that he was rushing to Anzhou. Otherwise, what is the picture? Although there are some prostitutes in the alley in front of them who do skin and flesh trades, the man in front of them is definitely not good enough. Su Lang turned a deaf ear. The tall young man walked sideways, sullenly said, "I can help lead the way, the master is willing to reward a few cents, that's the best." The two teenagers once stole a set of God of Wealth costumes from the Opera Garden. At the end of the new year, they went to a place a little far away to find those shops to visit the door, New Year's greetings. Beating and scolding the God of Wealth at the New Year's pass will give you some copper. Su Lang never paid attention to this sneaky market boy and walked straight to the door. Zhou Haijing stood up, shook the fan, slapped her shoulder once, came to the door, glanced at the flask in Su Lang's hand, and smiled sweetly. "Next time you better bring a flask of Changchun Palace wine. Good wine makes people greedy." Su Lang said helplessly, "Miss Zhou is embarrassed by me. The price is expensive." It's okay to say that she can afford to bite her teeth. It is this Changchun fermented wine, which has always been priceless in Beijing. The dignitaries and dignitaries have been divided up, and it is not the turn of outsiders like me. Nowadays, on the Aquarius Mountain, whether you can drink the Changchun Palace Immortal Brew or not is a status symbol. Changchun Palace is the local power of the Song family of Dali. Although there are no monks in the Five Realms for the time being, the Song family has a lot of support for Changchun Palace. In the Longxing land of the Song family, among several mausoleum guards, there is a Grand Master of Changchun Palace. Seeing that the two teenagers were still going to be door gods, Zhou Haijing held Gao Yu's head and twisted his wrists to make the tall teenager turn around and kick on his buttocks again. No matter how good-looking a woman is, she can't let go of fragrant farts. "I'm hungry, just feel the chicken and eat it as candy, and it's everywhere, and you'll be full." After dismissing the two teenagers, they went back to the yard and stretched out their hands to drive a bench from the house and threw them to Su Lang. When they stretched out their hands again, Su Lang threw the oil paper bag to Zhou Haijing. Zhou Haijing drank and ate crispy meat alone, his eyes gleaming, and said, "When I took the Xianjia ferry for the first time, I thought that I would also open a wine shop in the future. I had to let the entire Xianjia ferry in Aquarius, they all help me sell wine. TSK, at the end of the year, I will convert the fairy money into yellow and white things. The golden mountains and the silver mountains are really beautiful after thinking about it. Su Lang just smiled and drank, not taking it seriously. If Zhou Haijing really wants to make money from the gods, somewhere on the mountain, as long as she is willing to be sassy, she will make a large sum of money every year by relying on the title of worship and guest. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Yu Hong is old and he is descending from the mountain, but Zhou Haijing is still on the way up the mountain. Once she succeeds in reaching the end, the scenery is endless. Let's talk about Tongya Island in the south. Before the mountains and rivers sink, there were more than 100 countries in the past, but only a few martial arts fighters. It seems that Wu Tan and Huang Yun are also Wuxing. As for Iazhao, where martial arts are weak, there is only one person from Lei Gongmiao Peiaoxiang. If you don't count the divine continent of China, Haran's remaining 8 continents are evenly distributed. It is roughly a statutory rule that one continent has 2 or 3 top martial arts, sitting in the mountains and rivers. Zhou Haijing quipped, "Aren't you having a good relationship with General Shi? You don't know that when I was in the martial arts, I heard the old gang leader mention General Shi, a person as big as the sky. According to the old gang leader, put it on the wine table. A fart, it's almost like thunder." Su Lang smiled and said, "Is there anything else?" Knowing that Zhou Haijing was talking about that General Longshua, a 4th-rank miscellaneous general of the Dalibian army, for the vassal states of Aquarius in the early years, he was indeed an overlord of heaven. After leaving his hometown in the early years, Zhou Haijing kept his name incognito, wandering through the rivers and lakes, and once worked in a water transportation gang that relied on the 5 realms of martial arts to obtain a position with real power. It's more vigorous than Yamazawa Yosu to make money. For example, go to the ruins of the ancient battlefield that is quite brutal, while tempering the martial arts, while digging 3 feet, picking up the ruined armor and a bundle of arrows, and then reselling them at a high price. The monks of the lower 5 realms who ate food under the guise of slaying demons and eliminating demons, or stealing the copper money from the common people's house, or deliberately taking the bronze mirror to help the wealthy people exorcise evil, or pretending to be a teacher. The female sword immortal of the fairy mansion, spitting wine, swiping her finger, secretly using martial arts, tossed up a scene of the immortal family entwined with light, and helped to clean up those ghost houses that could not be sold at a low price. In fact, she relied on it. Real hard work, killing those ghosts and spirits, earning real hard money. The past is unbearable to look back, and it is bitter tears to talk too much. Drink alcohol. Zhou Haijing seemed to think of a past event, and said, "Dali Iron riding a knife on the battlefield is really ruthless. She is now half 100 years old, but she is less than 20 years old. She has left her hometown, wandering around, and began to wander alone on the rivers and lakes. She has traveled north and south for many years. She has also seen many strong and powerful frontiers and arrogant soldiers from all over the world. The horse is strong, brave and good at fighting, and kills the people of the rivers and lakes. It is called a force like a bamboo, cutting melons and vegetables." As a result, when he encountered the Dali frontier army who was headed south of the horseshoe, it was just as vulnerable as a piece of paper. Once Zhou Haijing was full of food and supported it, and wanted to see the power of the Dali cavalry with his own eyes. "I saw it for real. It really looked like a knife cutting tofu, just like a young and strong man bullying a child wearing open crotch pants." But it was precisely that time that Zhou Haijing was found by the monks who accompanied the army of Dali Iron Cavalry, but the two sides did not do anything. However, she was also targeted by Nyang Lang of the criminal department, and was recorded by the criminal department of Dali, and her name was recorded in the book. Fortunately, Zhou Haijing was prepared long ago and did not show any more horses. Su Lang didn't intend to stay here for long. Before leaving, he gathered together and said, "Before leaving, I have to remind Miss Zhou to pay attention to Chen Ping." And Zhou Haijing smiled casually. Is he a decent hypocrite? Like cheating money and cheating sex? Su Lang shook his head. On the contrary, Chen Pingon is very old-fashioned in doing things, but to be honest, don't be angry with Miss Zhou. You may not be the opponent of this person if you want to say that you are trying to do things. He is used to doing things afterwards. To ask about Jingyang Mountain, it was simply a ruin, and a sect was demolished. In my opinion, Jingyang Mountain was destroyed by Chen Pingon. It was not an ancestor hall visible to the naked eye at all, but various ancestors. Brother Feng's complicated human mind. Su Lang didn't have a good opinion of Chen Pingon, but the Qingzhou sword immortal was so arrogant that he didn't allow him to open his eyes and talk nonsense. Zhou Haijing nodded and said, "There is reason and reason." Su Lang also didn't know if she really listened to it, so he said nothing, got up and left. Zhou Haijing stood up, dropped the oil paper, shook the flask in his hand, and smiled. "I wish Su Jianxian all the best on this trip." After Su Lang left, Zhou Haijing began to shake the fan again, and her thoughts shook with the wind. While sighing, she reminded herself not to sigh. It is easy to run away from her wealth. Just thinking about her hard work and poor family background, the woman couldn't help but sigh. Gao Yu suddenly yelled outside, "Auntie Zhou, Mr. Chen is here again, and I have a friend by my side today." Zhou Haijing followed Guling to the Jingshi Dao's Henjia office last time. "By the way, I saw the Prince Song Su. It's a pity that he didn't look like a slumber who would rob the people's daughters and Jin Would Songjiao, since Song Su. He was a sword repairman, so the second Prince Dolly would have no life to sit on a dragon chair and wear a dragon robe, and even the chance to entrust the king to the feudal clan." Zhou Haijing immediately shouted, "Let Mr. Chen wait a moment. The old lady has to quickly touch up her makeup." Of course it wasn't that Chen Pingon had any wrong thoughts. Zhou Haijing stood at the door of the house, looking at Chen Pingon at the courtyard door, and joked, "My sect master Chen, can you please stop pestering me as a married woman? It doesn't sound good to spread it out." "I don't care, I'm afraid. It damages the reputation of sect master Chen's innocence." Chen Pingon walked into the yard and said, "Miss Zhou said," and laughed. Zhou Haijing caught a glimpse of the entourage in the yellow hat and blue shoes, and asked, "What is this young man?" Chen Pingon smiled and said, "Just call him Xiaomo." Zhou Haijing glanced at Xiaomo from head to toe, then smiled and asked, "How small?" Xiaomo smiled and said, "The knowledge here is hidden and not revealed, and it is not enough for outsiders." Zhou Haijing choked for a while. "Yo, it's still slick. If you are lying in the rivers and lakes outside the capital, you dare to molest the old lady like this, and slap you in circles." Xiaomo noticed the content of the woman's heartstrings and smiled. After entering the main room, the two sides sat opposite each other as they did last time. Xiaomo said with his heartfelt words before, Chen Pingon nodded, and Xiaomo turned and left the yard. In the alley not far away, there is a sneaky old man, Jian Shou, who is more than 200 years old, and is watching the sea. The foremen are rotten, and the young life is running out. No matter what happened anyway, Xiaomo went to chat with this old man who had followed several streets. Zhou Haijing took the initiative to take out a pot of wine, poured 2 bowls of wine, and asked curiously, "Sect Master Qin is really from a poor background like me, as rumored to the outside world? Have you been a kiln worker in your hometown for several years?" She was really ignorant before. It was because she was reluctant to spend money to look in the mirror. Zhou Haijing mistakenly thought that this young lord who was born in Aquarius Island was a son of a fairy family on the mountain, or she was born in a wealthy family. That's why she was particularly unpleasant. Just relying on Zuyin, holding a golden rice bowl, I don't know the suffering of the people, and Zhou Haijing pretends to be an approachable gentleman with me. Just say that during that battle, why did a young sword immortal fail to accomplish anything? Look at that Fengshue Temple great sword immortal Wei Jin. Yu Qinping is not greedy for life and fear of death. What is it? Only after inquiring again did she realize that this was not the case at all. Zhou Haijing was born as a fisherman, and the other party was a kiln worker in an alley. One depends on the water to draft the water and the other depends on the mountain to eat the mountain. Is that the same origin? I had known this a long time ago. Zhou Haijing probably would have missed a few yin and yang words when we met last time. In addition, Pei Qian, who has the nickname Jing Seiqian, is said to be a direct disciple of this young sword immortal. This made Zhou Haijing's impression of Qin Pingan a little better, and he had to take a high look. Although the master didn't show up and never played a sword, he had taught such a good apprentice. The upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. It means that Yu Hong and a large group of disciples and grandchildren. There are very few exceptions. What kind of master and what kind of apprentice teaches up and down the mountain? So this mountain lord of Lopaishan, who has been incognito for so many years, that he missed the tragic battle that fought all the way from the old dragon city to the capital of Dali, most of it was a little bit distressed. A woman's heart has a needle on the bottom of the sea, 9 bends and 18 bends, but so. Chen Pingan just nodded. Zhou Haijing squinted his eyes, raised his wine bowl and took a sip. Really, there is the skill of cutting wood and burning charcoal. Do you know how to pick wood and seal the kiln? It takes 5 or 6 days to stay on the mountain. Can you survive the pain? Chen Pingan nodded and said, they are all fairly familiar. Zhou Haijing shook her head and said, I don't believe it. Chen Pingan didn't say anything, believe it or not, don't care about me. I didn't drink your wine either. Anyway, the earlier deal will not be possible, and in the future, the two sides will keep the water in the water. Chen Pingan is about to stand up and say goodbye, and then explain clearly the reason for today's visit. Anyway, just a few words. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, what's the rush? The widow's door has been knocked twice, besides, it's not a lone man and a widow, and I haven't finished a bowl of wine on the table. Why, I was right. Can you drink white water, but can't drink bad wine? Chen Pingan hesitated. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, Sect Master Qin will leave after drinking a bowl of wine at any rate. Don't worry, there is no poison or sweat medicine inside. The aphrodisiac is even more ridiculous. It's very expensive. How can I be willing? Chen Pingan raised the wine bowl towards Zhou Haijing. She also lifted the bowl, and each took a drink. Zhou Haijing squinted and said with a smile, being a kiln worker, if I remember correctly, it is a first-class official kiln work of the Dai dynasty. Do you still need to burn charcoal to make money? Chen Pingan said slowly, I'm just an apprentice, no more than a formal kiln worker. In fact, if I don't have much money, I have to find some extra livelihood to supplement my family. If it's an extremely cold winter, I can make 100 kilos of white charcoal on the mountain. 1 or 2 $5. Burning black charcoal saves effort, and the market price is cheaper. It's just that we sell charcoal, and the rich people in the small town collect charcoal and get one in the middle. I heard that the price difference is not small. When he enters the mountains to chop wood and burn charcoal, Chen Pingan would bring a jar of pickles and carry a large bag of rice. Next to the charcoal kiln, he would set up a shelter from the wind and rain, set up a stove to make a fire, and occasionally bake potatoes and simmer yam or something. Moreover, Chen Pingan learned a lot of crafts from Lu Xianyang. Every time he entered the mountain, he carried a lot of guys, fished in a cage and arranged traps, but if he followed Old Man Yao into the mountains to search for soil, Chen Pingan would never dare to do so. Fancy. Zhou Haijing stepped on the bench with one foot, and said in amazement, "In the past, in order to gain a long experience and see how the emperor lived, I used to sneak into a small palace in the first month of the first month, but I really saw it." Outside of a palace, these great worlds saw two lifelike door gods in colorful clothes, almost the same height as people, wearing silk satin, colored armor, and real swords and guns. They made angry looks and scared me at first. It was a big jump, but when I leaned forward to touch it, Sect Master Qin, what do you think it was made of? Without guessing, Chen Pingan said directly, "There are several small countries in the middle of Aquarius Island. There is a custom of erecting charcoal generals as door gods in the imperial palace. Every year, they are invited out from the imperial treasury, and they will be brought back on February 2nd of the following year. The makeup is as new, without the slightest loss. Please follow the rule at the end of the year. In the words of the rivers and lakes, charcoal is more expensive than living people. It is said that some 100-year-old charcoal generals are estimated to be contaminated with dragon energy and can survive. During that duty period, I could cruise in the imperial city every night, and it was better than the night travel in the city god temple, but I was not as knowledgeable as Ms. Zhou, but I heard that I hadn't seen these with my own eyes, so I was very curious." Zhou Haijing didn't doubt it anymore, so he asked straightforwardly, "You still have to ask the bottom of it this time when you come to the door. You have to ask if I have a hatred of Yu Hong to be satisfied." Chen Pingan waved his hand and smiled. "I changed my mind, just because I am about to leave the capital, so I am here today to remind Miss Zhou that I will seek revenge with Yu Hong in the future, and accidentally caused an endless misunderstanding. Furthermore, remember not to bother the two seniors in the Fushitang in Yu Hong. One is called Zhu Fengxian and the other is called Yu Kangmang. Now the two seniors are both elders of the Fushitang. They have just joined the gang not long ago, but in fact they are just gangsters. After eating, I hope that no matter what happens in the future, I hope that Miss Zhou will open up to them so that they can withdraw." Zhou Haijing sneered and said, "Some people are in disputes with swords, and they have no eyes. Whoever says a word may be killed on the spot. Sect Master Qin is not the kind of viciousness that does not know the martial arts fight. Is it a bit embarrassing for me?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "If the two seniors are among them, Miss Zhou can speak to them in advance and say that I am Miss Zhou's friend. If the two seniors insist on not retreating, then they must blend in with the grievances of others, then it can only be his destiny." Zhou Haijing hesitated, "Yes. But just believing that Lord Qin Shan owes me a little favor." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Yes." Zhou Haijing said suddenly, "In fact, Sect Master Qin doesn't look like a sword fairy, but more like a scholar." The man who lived as a schoolmaster in a foreign country once said that there are sages, and the original intention of studying is yuan. I once said to her that the ants dare not cross if the young children draw the road with charcoal. Zhou Haijing used to sleep around an ancient site. In front of a hall, there was a bronze statue of an immortal holding something empty-handed. The laurel tree was ruined, the moss was all over the ground, the palace was barren, and the weeds were overgrown. Almost every time she encounters a man who prides himself on being an autumn wind guest, patrolling the night on horseback, joking, saying that she worked hard to refine her alchemy and seek immortality and dreamed of immortality. Zhou Haijing walked all the way, and the figure disappeared at dawn. It was a strange dream. Before leaving home, she asked the schoolmaster to help her dream interpretation. He said it was a kind of fate. Zhou Haijing raised her head and drank the wine in the bowl and put down the empty bowl. She stared at the white bowl and bowed her head and said, "Sect Master Qin is a cultivator. I must know that there is a saying on the mountain that we are reborn as human beings. It is not easy." Chen Pingan nodded, it's not easy. Zhou Haijing said solemnly, the place where I was born and raised must be repaid. Chen Pingan answered, if you can't avenge your gratitude, you must avenge it. Zhou Haijing raised her head, revealing an expression of surprise that could not be concealed. Life is alive, there are people who are wronged, and there are debts to repay. The children of the arena, there are gratitude for gratitude, and revenge for revenge. Chen Pingan said indifferently, otherwise, what do we work hard to do in martial arts? Zhou Haijing hesitated for a moment, and took the initiative to pass the wine bowl, about to want to touch a bowl and take a drink. In fact, Chen Pingan was more hesitant, and he lifted his wine bowl and gently touched him. Snakes belong to the river, and the drunkard also walks in the water. Zhou Haijing drank it in one sip, wiped the corners of his mouth, and wondered, isn't Sect Master Qin a sword immortal? Where do you start with the hard work of martial arts? Knowing that Chen Pingan is a great master of martial arts that is destined not to be low, but I always feel that compared to the others' sword immortal status, martial arts is a ramification. Chen Pingan shook his head and smiled, learning boxing used to help me renew my life. How dare you not worry about it? Relatively speaking, practicing swordsmanship, especially becoming a swordsman, is a very late thing. Zhou Haijing asked, are you a martial artist of the end? Chen Pingan nodded and said, otherwise, why should I be Pei Qian's master? Zhou Haijing asked tentatively, Sect Master Qin, are you looking at me? Chen Pingan said helplessly, Miss Zhou, don't make this kind of joke. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, then what are you doing with me? If Chen Pingan is a mountaintop state, Zhou Haijing would still be half believing, can he say the end? Then why don't you go to discuss with Song Chongjing? Xiao Mo appeared at the entrance of the courtyard, but there was an old man beside him. Gao Yu and Wan Yan, who stayed in the alley and didn't leave, were a little surprised, because the old man, who was familiar, was the storyteller who spit under the overpass and sold a few cheats by the way. Xiao Mo explained to Chen Pingan with his own voice that this old sword repairman in the Sevuing realm, who claimed to be proficient in physiognomy, caught the young man's lifestyle at a glance, and observed the young man's temperament for a period of time, and felt that he could inherit part of it. The mantle of Taoism is just a matter of sword making. The old man saw the man in the green shirt in the courtyard and immediately converged his mind, bowed his head and clasped his fists, and said with his heart, the big hidden in the morning, the small hidden in the wild, the old can only play in the market, not as good as Chen Jianxian. Chen Pingan clasped his fists in return, and laughed with his heartfelt voice, it is gratifying and congratulating for the Taoist friends to accept disciples. Zhou Haijing leaned against the courtyard gate and asked, Chen Pingan, are you really a stop? Chen Pingan treated people with sincerity and replied, it's true. Zhou Haijing's eyes were strange, what's the scene on that mountain? Chen Pingan said, it's not high enough. Zhou Haijing looked at the eyes and expression of the man in the green shirt. Damn, how come this guy looks so handsome? It seems that my old lady is drinking too much. Could it be this guy who poured ecstasy soup into his drink? Zhou Haijing smiled to herself. Do not delay other people's apprenticeship and apprenticeship. It was mainly Zhou Haijing's inexplicable smile, looking at people. Chen Ping'an and Xiao Mo returned to Ren Yuniyun building. Xian Wei was asleep in the side room. In the alley outside the door of Zhou Haijing's house, the old man picked out the reason and told Wan Yan to follow his own practice. The delicate young man glanced at Gao Yu, hesitated for a moment, and nodded, only to say to Gao Yu that he would definitely come back. The old man told Wan Yan not to bring anything, so he left the alley together. Gao Yu actually hoped that Wan Yan would leave like this, and also thought that Wan Yan could not leave, stay company, and share weal and woe, but his good friends eventually left, and it seems that it is not bad. In short, the heart of a tall young man, empty. Zhou Haijing looked at the boy with a complicated mood, squatting at the door, holding his head. She sighed, gave Gao Yu an address somewhere in the capital, waved her hand and said, "You follow the address to find someone. His name is Su Lang, the guy who brought the wine in front, so I told you to find him, let him teach you some martial arts. As for how much you can learn, it depends on your own ability." Gao Yu suddenly turned his head, choked up and said, "Thank you, Aunt Zhou." Zhou Haijing smiled and said, "Little bastard, call Sister Zhou." Gao Yu grinned, and ran away. He planned to go home to pack up the package first, but ran to the corner, turned his head and shouted, "Auntie Zhou, remember to tell her for me tomorrow, I will go to the rivers and lakes." Up. Zhou Haijing didn't say anything. What's so good about the arena? It's just that for a teenager, it's better to walk through the rivers and lakes, no matter whether it is good or bad in the end, whether it is returning to the hometown in good clothes, or desperate, it is better than watching the rivers and lakes for a lifetime. At dawn, Ning Yao's retreat ended, and inside the inn room, he stepped to the Ren Yuniyun building on the side of Qin Pingan. Xian Wei was squatting at the door of the wing with Xiao Mo, eating breakfast together. Xian Wei saw the woman carrying the sword box, shocked as a heavenly man, and silently extended a thumb to the Master Chow. Qin Pingan didn't have any packages that needed to be prepared. He just asked Xian Wei to hurry up after he finished eating, and was about to leave Dei capital. Xian Wei finished eating 2 bites, clapped his hands, and was about to greet Xiao Mo. Don't let Master Chow Xian wait for a long time, only to find that Xiao Mo had stood up and stood aside. "Take it, this dogleg." A group of people went to the inn to check out. The old shopkeeper smiled and joked, "Chen Xiaoxia is going back to the house. Didn't get a fame, and will not stay for a few more days. Not to mention that he is bigger than the old master of the fish, so he can't lose to Zhou Haijing. Jianghu girl, right?" Chen Pingan leaned against the counter and said with a smile, "I went back, the capital is expensive, I want to stay a few more days, but I don't agree with the money in my pocket. Next time you come to Beijing, if you are still willing to come to a small store to settle down, I will give you a 10% discount. If the shopkeeper doesn't fold in half, even if I come to the capital next time, I won't come to your side. Have you bargained like this? It's a pity that you don't do business, Master Qin." The treasured girl of Lu Lao's shopkeeper, named Lu Chai, with a small print of Tammy, got up early. She was already busy with a rag and a bucket now, but she was still a little sleepy at the moment. Although the girl is a little confused about looking forward to the world and thinking about being a heroine, in fact, she usually helps in the shop and does trivial things so that she can earn some money from her father. It's easy to spend money and it's hard to make money, blame yourself. www. Until novel. Calm too fast. Chen Pingan will remind Xing Yi that he can travel to Dali capital in the future. If it is predestined, we will meet each other. The girls saw Ning Yao and shouted, "Master Ning." Ning Yao shook his head and said, "I am not your master." The girl grinned and shouted casually, "Master Ning, you don't need to be so serious," and asked, "I'm leaving. When will you come?" Ning Yao smiled and said, "It's hard to tell." The girl screamed, still a little lost. "But it's okay, the children of the rivers and lakes, you can afford to put it down, there will be a period of time after the green mountains and green waters." The old shopkeeper breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the girl didn't make a fuss about running away from home. The capital was set up in the capital to supervise the yamen, which was under the control of the Ministry of Industry, the Water Department healer, and the Du Shui Qing clerk. They were all high-ranking officials in charge. Dealing with sluices and dams and riverbed dredging is considered to be an official meal, not a big profit, but at any rate, it can protect the harvest from droughts and floods, plus the ability to plant elm and willow and maintain it, and there is some extra income. The second son opened a satin shop in the north of the capital, and he was also regarded as a family and established a business. So the old shopkeeper now only has the least worry-free baby girl in front of him. The reason for the worry is of course because it hurts the most. The group boarded a southbound ferry and left Beijing to return home. Now Nujiadu, with the continuous withdrawal of the Dali garrison, there are more and more frequent ferry boats. Thanks to the existence of Piyun Mountain and the confluence of the three rivers, Nujiadu has become one of the important hub ferry crossings between the north and south routes of Dai. Chenpingan, Ningyao. Xiama, Xianwei. There were only 2 people when they came, and 2 more when they went. A green shirt. Ningyao was wearing a golden robe and carrying a sword box. She didn't bother to use any tricks. Xiao Mo is always dressed in a shabby yellow hat and blue shoes. After going to the Jingshi Dao Xingya office once, Xianwei has become more courageous, and he is ready to make himself a peachwood sword that is standard for the Daoist of the Tianchi mansion. Up. 1 person and 1 room. This is the first time Xianwei has taken the Xianjia ferry with the white cloud bird, and he only feels that he has finally made a fortune. Ningyao is reading in the house. Chenpingan took Xiao Mo and Xianwei to the bow to enjoy the scenery. At this moment, I listened to a large group of young monks who got together nearby, chatting over there, without any heartfelt words, speaking without restraint, as if they came from several different mountain sects. They had just met at the ferry, and after boarding the ship, just make an appointment together, those female training fighters of Yingyi and Jianyan, but they are out of the same school, go down the mountain to travel. This is how the incense love comes. Because there are so many fairies, the male chi practitioners began to show off their magical powers. Some showed their literary talents, bowed their heads and muttered, talking about the grief of subjugation, the pain of breaking the family, and the sorrow of life experience. Time is easy to pass away, life is hard for a long time, I shed tears. There are people who accidentally reveal their wealth, but in fact, this is more immediate than trembling with talent. In the young immortal genealogist, no matter how rich they are divided into 3, 6, or 9 classes. Those who own a private ferry are really rich. Generally speaking, only the children of Taoist couples in Daxian Mansion have this kind of treatment. Then there is the genus of Fuliafaizu who eats money. After that, when he is away from home, the immortal master can ride immortal birds and different animals. In the end, of course, it is to travel through the mountains and rivers with 2 legs. If you are in a hurry, you can at most use some magical runes and armored horse runes with ordinary materials and relatively low rank. Chenpingan thought of Fan Air from Old Longqing, who had an osmanthus island under his name. As for Liu Yuzhou of Ai Aizhou, forget it, it can't be compared. Xianwei's ears are listening, it's all experience and world. Somehow I talked about Piyun Mountain and Yao Banquet. Xiao Mo knew it in his heart. Xianwei, a half-hearted gas trainer, couldn't do it accurately with the rumored rumors of the arena, but adding these monks from the genealogy on the mountain, it would be the same. Besides, Xianwei said the truth, which is quite reasonable. People in the rivers and lakes only have the wrong name instead of the wrong nickname. Wei Yao. Xianwei felt that this Dao name seemed quite domineering after hearing too much. One continent night tour, who is it? Xiao Mo hesitated for a moment and asked, my son, that Wei Shanjun. Chenpingan smiled and said, I only talk about appearance, grace, elegance, ancient style, and forget the vulgar. If you say that you live in the world, you are sentimental and righteous, I really can't pick out any shortcomings anyway. It was only the first time that the 2 sides met. When Wei Bo was still the landlord of Kaitenshan, it was more funny, and it was different from the image of Wei Shanjun in the Piyun Mountain today. Xiao Mo nodded, understanding. There should be something in your own son's words. Is it an exception to remind yourself that gifts should not be taken lightly? It seems that Wei Shanjin's nickname is definitely not a mere name. Where did Chen Pingon think of what Xiao Mo was thinking, or else he would definitely scream for Wei Shanjun. For these years, Wei Bo has not been easy. The reputation of the Piyun Mountain Night Tour banquet has been spread to the Central Earth Shenzhou and Beiju Luzhou. Home over there. A small town in Huaihuang County, there are many places of interest and historical sites. Nowadays, there are more immortal visitors like Christian carp who cross the river. For example, the Wenwu temple built on the tombs of gods in Laozishan is just like the capital city in the city temple of a country. In fact, unlike the city temple, there is no level of distinction between the Wenwu temples of all countries in Zhuzhou. The civil servants and military commanders of the country, but the Wenwu temple built by Dali in these two places, occupying a large area, the Sulongjing site is definitely going to be seen. The peach blossoms on both sides of Taoya Alley are very strange. The flowers bloom and fall are different from other places. In recent years, there are often foreign tourists who owe hands to steal the peach branches, and then they will be escorted to the county office immediately, and they have to pay a large sum of money to the gods. If you don't have money, you will have to eat a prison meal if you don't have enough security. In addition, there are Chao's ancestral residence in Nipping Lane, Yuan's ancestral residence in Erlang Lane, peach blossom cakes at the New Year's shop in Qilong Lane, and the wine shop at Huang Xinyang's house. Although they sell ordinary drinks, women are already old. The old look was decayed, and he was replaced by his son and daughter-in-law to inherit the family business. It is said that the Saint Wan Qiong is a frequent visitor to this restaurant. Longquan Jianzong's friend Lu Xianying, who is also a sword fairy, and the two of them are here to get drunk together, so the outsiders have traveled here so far. Can't they sit down and feel immortal? It's a pity that the Lost Mountain, which is famous for moving a continent, is shaped like a closed mountain, and it doesn't entertain guests, so you have to stop outside the mountain. Then there are the small and large porcelain shops in the small town. The selling price is much lower than that of Xianjia ferry in other places. Although you don't need ferry money, who doesn't like to buy a bargain? What's more, I have come to the boundary of Longzhou. If I don't buy a piece of porcelain that is famous for a continent, I will take it back. It's like a trip in vain. In Huaihuang County, many of the dragon kiln openings in the past were all official kills. Some of the kiln openings were supervised and inspected for imperial kills. Naturally, they were the highest-ranking official kills. Now, the level is strict and the etiquette system is clear, otherwise it will not break so many defective porcelains, and eventually pile up an old porcelain mountain. Time has changed, and now some of the kills have lost their official kiln status and have to be converted into second-class folk kilns that are no longer supervised and purchased by the government. Several of the kiln mouths were secretly acquired by Dong Shuijing. He paid a lot of money to hire many dragon kiln masters who had already stopped working, and asked them to come out of the mountain again. The standard is still very different from the porcelain without them. Not to mention these masters, who are all idle masters. Coupled with the new owner's good money, the salary is very impressive in a year, let alone the apprentices they brought out are not bad, they are solid craftsmanship produced year after year. Therefore, the various Longzhou porcelains produced by these folk kilns are still no different from the officially supervised and folk-fired, in the early official kilns. Porcelain wares were sold endlessly, so they were sold to the bottom of the continent and became the first-class study offerings for scholars from all over the world. However, Dong Shuijing still likes to hide behind the scenes. Chen Pingon lay on the railing, pointed to the distance, and introduced, "You have reached the border between Longzhou and Hongzhou, and you can dock at Nujiadu for at least one incense stick." Xianwei raised his eyes and looked into the distance. He was too far away and could not see any flower heads. He just asked, Master Chow, just now I heard those young gods say that the Nyojiao ferry is not a normal source of wealth, except for the Dei military ferry. Every ferry on the mountain has to pay a large amount of berthing fees. Doesn't it mean lying down and collecting money every day? There is such a good thing in the world. It's a big ferry, it is Mr. Wei Dashin and the surname Chin. Owned by the Sword Ferry, good fellow, Chen Pingon explained with a smile, each Xianjia ferry boat will consume a lot of local landscape spirit. If you don't spend money on the gods, you will soon be fishing, and your spirit will be exhausted. If you really do this, look at those in the dragon. Will the genealogy masters and the gods of various landscapes in the state and land boundary rebel? So you can't just look at making money and not looking at people spending money. Xian Wei sneered and said, Master Chow, these words are boring. It's obviously a way of making money from the Daijin Dujin, so you should be the half-master of the ferry. Isn't it right? Someone is speechless. Xian Wei asked again, this ferry will stay at Nujiadu for 2 hours. Shall we disembark and visit the mountains and rivers together? I heard that the porcelain thief in Huaihuang County is very expensive. I don't have to worry about selling it at all. As long as you buy it, you will earn a steady profit. Don't lose, I have to buy a few. I still have a gold ingot on my body. I just don't know if 2 hours are enough for me to go back and forth from the ferry to the town. I heard that the rules are heavy there, and the ferry master can't travel far away from the wind, so he can only hike. Chen Pingon said, our destination this time is Nujiadu. Xian Wei turned his head and said in doubt, let's disembark right there. Master Chow, your school mountain is located in Longzhou. Then, aren't we neighbors with Wei Dashin? No wonder they used to set up a stall at Jin Sudu to make money, but they were all poor. If you want to say that you are the pauper under the mountain, is it possible that Master Chow, or Chen Shanju, is the pauper on the mountain? Xian Wei asked cautiously, you are called the Lord Chen Shan, and the surname Chen Jianxian, who has an eyebrow with Wei Shanjun, also has the surname Qin, do you recognize it? Chen Pingon suppressed a smile and nodded, of course I do. Xian Wei breathed a sigh of relief, there is such a relationship, then you definitely don't have to go to the night banquet, right? Chen Pingon thought for a while, that seems to be right. After being said by Xian Wei, Chen Pingon discovered that he had indeed never participated in Wei Boss night banquet. It's weird that this immortal Wei is talking nonsense around, as if he can always tell a certain truth in the end. It is really not easy to achieve what Jing Juzhong said incorrectly. The boundaries of Huaihuang County, Dei Court and Piyin Mountain each have a mountain and water restriction. If monks are standing on the ground, it will be a scene of clouds and fog all the year round. It is a bit similar to the sea of clouds in the old Dragon City in the early years, making a yawning Dixian. It is difficult to truly observe the scenery of the mountains and rivers, unless you disembark and land. You still need to hang the sword talisman to protect the wind, overlook the mountains, and look a little more. Zushan Luopashan, Zushitang is on Jisa Peak. The remaining 3 vassal hills, Baolu Mountain, were leased to the Longquan sword sect for 300 years. However, Lu Xianying, who was newly appointed as the lord of the Longquan sword sect not long ago, made a weird deal with Luopa Mountain, allowing Luopa Mountain to spend money. The 3 hills were rented back for almost 270 years, and Lu Xianying was given 27 Guyu money. The back of the pinfish was leased to Zhuchai Island. It has a Xianjia ferry and Nyojiao Mountain in Baiguzi. Chen Pingon bought Jinju Mountain with only 1 gold, fine copper, because the mountain on the easternmost side was too small and too close to the town, so construction was never started. In addition, there are Huimeng Mountain, Huanghu Mountain, Cinnabar Mountain, Weixia Peak, and the worship platform on the westernmost side. Therefore, Luopa Mountain has already possessed 11 vassal hills. Xiao Mo helped his hat and squinted. A lot of doorways can be seen at once. The first is the Dragon Cliff of Longji Mountain, the second is the Piyun Mountain where Wei Shanjun is located, and then the mysterious layout of those dragon kiln mouths, as well as the setting of Fulu Street and Taoya Alley. Obviously it is the masterpiece of Mr. Sanshan Joho. And that seemingly inconspicuous stone arch bridge. If you bump into this place without knowing it, you must be careful. A small town and the mountains to the west, the intricate and complex veins, the energetic bullfighting kendo air luck, the prosperous literary and martial luck, the abundant landscape aura, and the subtle but quintessential aftermath of the divine Tao, layered on top of each other. Stacked, crisscrossed, extremely chaotic. It was just a landscape, and it would give Xiao Mo the illusion of confronting a certain 14th level sword repairman. And it's like being face to face close at hand. It's just that for some reason, there is a huge blank space in the mountains. It's like several hills have been relocated. Xiao Mo closed his gaze, and said with emotion in his heart, the sun is practicing here, and he can't make a single step wrong. Chen Pingan smiled and said, thinking is complicated. It is a mess that no one except the patriarch of the three religions can solve. Simple thinking is just that the mountains and the water flow, and everything stops and goes. Xiao Mo said sincerely, the sun's heart is unparalleled in the world. Chen Pingan was so angry that he patted Xiao Mo's hat on his head, it's almost done. When you arrive at Luopa Mountain, collect your supernatural powers without a teacher, and remember that the mountains in my family are the least provocative of you. Xiao Mo smiled and helped his hat, remember. Nujiadu. In a relatively secluded place, there is a white jade railing built on the edge of the cliff. There is a little girl in black, carrying a golden pole on her shoulder, holding a trekking pole, and slung a small cotton bag. The little girl widened her eyes and looked into the white clouds in the distance. She didn't know how many times she asked the same question, Jingqing, why hasn't the good man Mountain Lord come yet? On the side, Chen Lingjun was sitting on the railing with Bai Xian, playing boxing, with a folding fan in hand, and whoever lost was beaten. These two uncles, one does not need to practice, the other does not need to practice swords, usually panic at leisure, of course, they are happy to come here with the millet grains. The big white goose had already hurried to Tongyi's house in advance, and took the wind and kite ferry that was located in Poshan Mountain, followed by Chao Qingqing, Zongfuzi, Chui Wei, and Sui Right. As for Pei Qian, I don't know why he went to a Wafudi. Chen Lingjun said casually, what's the hurry? According to the time when the ferry boat docked in the past, there are almost 3/4 of an hour left. Besides, for these mountain ferry boats, the wind direction is erratic, and the difference of half an hour is common. Millet scratched his face and nodded. Chen Lingjun glanced at the millet grains, craned her neck and widened her eyes, eagerly, she stared at a place. How long has it been? Earlier, I received a letter from the master of Feijian from the capital. I learned that I would take a certain ferry back to Luopa Mountain today. Therefore, Xiaomili went out early this morning. As soon as the morning broke, the patrol had already been completed, and then waited at the door of Chen Lingjun, without knocking, just as the door gawed. As a result, after arriving at the New Jiashan ferry, the three of them still waited here for a full hour, which is not good. Brother Bai Xian's forehead has already been wrapped. Wait any longer, it is estimated that they will have to grow horns. Chen Lingjun jumped up, pinned the folding fan close to his waist, and began to jump on the railing. His sleeves crackled, his mouth chattering in a hurry, like a law. He went crazy, and then he fell into dantian. Collect work. Bai Xian rolled his eyes. From the sleeve, I took out a small and exquisite purple sand teapot, and sipped the tea. It was the wolfberry tea. Before Nguan Shu returned to the mountain, he saw Bai Xian, who was keeping a stall inside the pavilion, and he told him about teapots and tea drinking. Bai Xian knew that Uncle Bai had been cheated by Uncle Qin. Millet waited for a while, but still couldn't see the shadow of the fairy, and said softly, Jing Qing, your spells don't seem to be very bright. Lu Chongrun walked around Baozhai today, and came to the ferry to relax. By chance, he saw a group of 3 people with millet grains. The dress of the little black girl was so eye-catching. Seeing Lu Chongrun's figure, Xiaomili immediately rushed over, stood still, straightened his waist and raised his head, and said 3 titles in one breath, I have seen Island Master Lu, Guanshi, Sister Lu. Lu Daozhu is a monk, Lu Guanshi is the love of the 2 families, and Lu's sister is a personal friendship. Chen Lingjun and Bai Xianyao held fists away, even if they had said hello. Anyway, Lu Daozhu is recognized as half of his own family, and he is polite and hypocritical. Lu Chongrun nodded to the 2 of them, then smiled and stretched out his hands towards the head of the millet grain. Xiaomili hurriedly shrank his neck and lowered his head, and said in a panic, I can't touch it, I'm already so much shorter than Pei Qian. Lu Chongrun retracted his hand and asked with a smile, waiting for someone. Xiaomili looked around, lowered his voice and whispered quietly, waiting for the good man mountain owner and his wife. And the good guy Shanju said in the letter that he took 2 people home this time, but the letter did not say who they were. Of course, the millet grains have to come over, so as to confirm whether there is a little girl with short winter melon in the first time. Lu Chongrun nodded, don't delay you and others, I have to go back to the fish first. Xiaomili said, Lu Island Master, I am free to look back, I will go to your mountain to be a guest. Lu Chongrun was a little strange, why he suddenly got bolder. For many years, this cute little water monster with the status of right guardian of Luopishan has stayed on the side of Luopishan, at most at the gate of the mountain, and will never go out. It's actually quite an exception to come to New Jiashan like this. But Lu Chongrun still agreed with a smile. She left the ferry in Yufeng. The dragon boat that was salvaged with the water haul back then was leased to the Dali Frontier Army by Luopa Mountain for free. When the imperial court returned the dragon boat ferry, it was so dilapidated that the costly repairs were even higher. The value of the dragon boat turning over the ink itself. When the 2 sides handed over the ferry, Zhu Lian from Luopishan didn't say a word. Later, the dragon boat was transferred by Cui Dongshan to a blessed place in the Lotus Route, where it was repaired as new. Lu Chongrun has been in charge of dragon boat Fanmo very early, and has never thought of her as a temporary post for many years. The so-called going out experience of some disciples is actually confessed on the ferry, but the Luopishan side does things kindly and earns dividends every year. Returning to peaches and rewards for plums, Luopa Mountain took the initiative to set aside 2 treasures of feng shui rich in water transportation in the Lotus Route that is already the bottleneck of the first-class blessed land, so that the 5 daughters of Zhuchai Island's ancestor hall can practice or retreat there. Seek opportunities to break the boundaries. One is a part of the Nanchuan Water Hall, which was presented to Luopa Mountain by Shenlin, the source of Jidu Lingyuan, Luzhou, North Ju, and a stream presented by Longting Ho Liyuan. After Zhuchai Island moved out of Shujian Lake in the early years, it occupies a hill here. Although it is leased from Luopa Mountain, it is indeed a bit suspicious of being under the fence. Fortunately, it is destined to be peaceful, the landscape is alive, and there are no neighbors on the mountain. The intrigue disputes, and there is no messy bullying, and the fact that the sect makes money, it is also very stable. You only need to split the accounts with Luopa Mountain. The female repairmen of Zhuchai Island only need to be at ease to practice the Tao. Then the only thing that needs Lu Zongran's heart, there is only one, which is to be careful of the former Yumi and later Miyu. Before, Yumi accompanied Nguan Shu to the back of the fish to give New Year greetings and presents. In addition, he had taken a dragon boat ferry several times. The most annoying thing is not this, but the Yumi, who has been deliberately alienating Zhuchai Island female sisters, but the problem is that Yumi is unintentional, but Lu Chong runs direct and repass disciples are intentional, and each cares about Yumi of. Especially when Miye's true identity came to light, it turned out to be the sword fairy who shined in the old Dragon City battlefield and killed his enemies like hemp, and most importantly, Miyu came from the famous sword spirit Great Wall. After coming and going, there are more on Zhuchai Island. Whenever he mentions Mi Dajiangxian, his eyes shine, and he always finds the opportunity to be a guest on Luopa Mountain, which makes Lu Zhongruan very angry. In this way, can they not do their best while working on the dragon boat ferry? Millet continued to return to the railing, waiting eagerly for the ferry. Suddenly I saw the sky ferry boat was as small as a mustard seed. Millet's face was full of surprise, and he yelled with joy, Jing Qing, it works. In fact, how long has it passed since Chen Lingjun's previous immortal technique was used? Chen Lingjun sat on the railing, but he didn't feel guilty and laughed. Chen Pingan used his water and cloud body to leave the ferry first, and instantly came to the railing of the ferry, reached out to hold the Tsingyi boy's head, and asked with a smile, what is so funny? Chen Lingjun wiped his face. Master finally went home, almost crying with joy. Bai Xian, with a large forehead, continued to roll his eyes. Thinking of a serious matter, Bai Xian jumped off the railing and started to file a complaint. It was not easy to call the hermit from outside, so he used the name of the mountain lord, Shan Lord. If you don't come again, we will be abducted. It's clean. Don't you know, the mountain master, that Yulao Jinshu is too much, he worships the sword platform every day, he will stop by for the 9 of us, and he is called pointing swordsmanship, especially looking at me. The look in my eyes, let alone a disciple who hasn't passed the door, is simply his long-lost son. He sees me hairy, Shanju. Honestly, it's not just gossip behind me, just like Lauer, I really can't be my master. Chen Ping'an angrily smiled and said, just your vision is the highest, is your realm high? Bai Xian's arms crossed his chest. There is one thing to say, nothing to say, far less than the mountain master, more than enough than Qing Fatty and the others. In another 3 to 5 years, leaving Sun Chun Wang's girl aside, I can pick one. 7. When Bai Xian saw Ning Yao, he rubbed his eyes. He was right, it was Ning Yao. Bai Xian immediately shut up obediently. Yao Xiaoyan and Nalan Yubiao, these 2 girls, are probably crazy. Especially that King Sun Chun, who usually sees people with dead fish eyes and facial paralysis. When he saw Ning Yao, he couldn't kowtow to recognize master on the spot. Bai Xian knows that King Sun Chun is very proud. Even if he is brought to the Luopa Mountain by the hermit, he still thinks about going to the colorful world and going to Feixingcheng, only to find Ning Yao to learn swordsmanship. Otherwise he likes the little girl. I would rather have no preacher and no master. Alas, I'm still young and naive. Ning Yao is the kind of apprentice who would accept apprentices casually. Besides, who is Ning Jianxian? She is our master's Taoist companion. You have a good relationship with the hermit. Can Master Ning Jianxian run? After all, it's the little girl's family, and her brain is not bright. After the ferry docked, Ning Yao and the others came here. Xian Wei looked around, not knowing where the top of Master Chao's mountain was. Mrs. Mountain Lord. The millet grains are a little embarrassing, and I just can't get them when I want to give them to melon seeds. Sister called Ning failed, because Pei Qian knew about it, so I had to keep a small account book. Ning Yao smiled and stretched out his hand. Xiaomi Lyle blossomed, and quickly handed out a handful of melon seeds. Xiao Mo took out a heavy cotton bag from his sleeve, which was filled with golden melon seeds. Xiao Mo squatted down and smiled and said, "My name is Xiao Mo. I am the sun's obedience. This is a meeting ceremony. The courtesy is light. Don't dislike the right guardian." Zhou Mili was stunned on the spot, frowning with two sparse and yellowish brows, giving gifts as soon as they meet. She hurriedly raised her head to look at the good man mountain master. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded, "Just take it, don't be polite with Shema, he is a good-for-profit boy." Then Chen Pingan whispered, "It's a bag of golden melon seeds, which are golden melon seeds made of gold." "What? Golden melon seeds? Is this still light?" "Ceremony is not light, and affection is as heavy as a mountain. How could a good person like Mr. Xiao Mo suddenly pop up in the world? Is Mr. Xiao Mo an unexplored prophet? How do you know that you want a bag of golden melon seeds in your dreams?" The little girl in black embraced the golden pole and the green bamboo stick, and said funny thanks, and then took the bag with her hands. The millet grains bent her knees and laughed and said, "Mr. Xiao Mo, the bag is so scary, I almost wanted it. Can't hold it falling to the ground." Xiao Mo squinted his eyes with a warm expression, and then slowly got up when Xiao Mili took the bag. Chen Pingan touched the head of the millet grains, "Hurry up and put it away." Millet nodded vigorously, and finally put the bag into his beloved cotton shoulder bag. Xiao Mo gave Chen Lingjun and Bai Xian a robe. Chen Lingjun nodded, took the robe, and thanked him, thinking that this little Mo brother is more on the road. From this moment on, by Zuani's gourd painting dipper, this little Mo was the candidate for cutting chicken heads and burning yellow paper. As a result, the two found Chen Pingan cast their sights, and they immediately clasped their fists to the little Mo who hit it off, and later became worthy of brothers. Millet stared at the young Taoist priest and blinked. She waited for the introduction of the good man. Chen Pingan smiled and introduced Xian Wei, the immortal's immortal, the captain's lieutenant. "I will cultivate Tao in our mountains in the future, so it's a guest." I wanted to say that Xian Wei is not a real Taoist priest. It's just that Chen Pingan instantly realized that this sentence was inappropriate. He is not a real Taoist, who is? Chen Lingjun laughed and said, "Xian Wei Daoist, what a coincidence, I know a lot of Taoist friends. Daozu. Observers. Brother Jia in Qilong Lane, and that Zhang Shanfeng from Litafeng. With his own master by his side, speaking is hard-hearted. The visitor is a guest, no matter what your background is." Xian Wei was a little restrained, squeezing out a slightly blunt smiling face. "I always feel that these two children look at the old-fashioned Hingqiu, but they are a little bit unclear in their minds. Look like. Xiao Mili is a conscientious ear-reporting god." He started to talk to Chen Pingan about some recent anecdotes about the Longzhou boundary. For example, on the Lushan side, I heard that there are more masters who like to watch deer in Songyin. His words are mysterious. What blue lantern hugs the bun on the Yang Palace, and the white hair comes back to Zhenyuan people? And what is so poor that there is no month to watch this year, staying in this mountain and not thinking about returning? Chen Pingan smiled and didn't take it seriously. Because he roughly knows the other party's bottom line. In fact, Chen Pingan knows all the cultivators in the mountains to the west. It seemed that when the Luopa mountain became famous, a lot of celestial masters of the world suddenly popped out of the nearby hills. Millet also said that aha nowadays, but it's amazing, it has become a carry handle near Qilong Lane, white geese and roosters fight together. This is not the New Year shop now has a pile of feather shuttlecocks and goose feather dusters out of thin air. Chen Pingan did not go directly to Luopa Mountain, but sacrificed a talisman, intending to visit the sword platform first. Lao Jianshou Yue, whose name was called upside down, is now the name dedicated to Luopa Mountain. Lao Jianxiu picked 2 sword fairy embryos, He Xiangting and Yu Qingzhang. And these 2 children, they also deliberately left the Luopa mountain to follow the practice outside Ziyue. In fact, Yu Yu was still very surprised by this, because Lao Jianxiu really couldn't understand why they didn't recognize the master if they let the hermit master. Even if they recognized a master, it would be better than finding such a master, right? It's just that the pie is falling from the sky, and I can't push the door out. Yu Yue is somewhat emboldened. At any rate, he is a jade realm. I really want to accept disciples. I really don't want to ruin the good aptitudes of the 2 sword fairies. Yu Yu will preach carefully and teach all swordsmanship. Today, in a hut on the worship pedestal, Lao Jianxiu smiled at the 2 children sitting at the table, and said, as soon as we 3 become masters and apprentices, we still have to look at Chen's success or failure in the end. Shan's his meaning requires him to nod. Secondly, even if Shanju Chen's side is definitely okay, before we leave Luopa Mountain, we have to say hello before leaving. This is a courtesy. I believe that regardless of the sword spirit of the Great Wall and the Howran world, how are the local customs and customs different, but this point is the same after all. Xiangting, Qingzhang, what do you think? When I arrived at Puha, I was able to find the place completely. Miyu leaned against the door with his arms around his chest, watching coldly. Among the 9 sword fairy embryos brought back by Master Hermit from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the 2 with the best sword training aptitude, roots and temperament are the unsmiling little girls Sun Chun Wang, and he and Pei Qian just arrived at Luopa Mountain. Bai Xian who asked the box twice. Then there is Yu Qingzhang. As for the other children, if you don't talk about the rank of flying swords, just talk about the talent and character of sword practice, they are actually the same. Yao Xiaoyan may be the worst one. She is too soft-tempered, but she can't match the little girl's natal Feijin, 3 of them. However, in Mi's view, Yao Xiaoyan's baby girl is indeed lucky, and it is not so good. The reason is very simple. If it is in the Great Wall of Jinqi, Yao Xiaoyan will definitely need to go out of the city to fight in another 10 years, at most 20 years. Miyu can be sure that a sword repairer like Yao Xiaoyan will die if she goes to the battlefield. Either she will die, or the protector will die because of her involvement. With Yao Xiaoyan's temperament, even if she left the battlefield alive once, at most twice, her Jinqin would have a big problem. But when he arrived in the vast world, Yao Xiaoyan could follow the steps and practice safely, become the middle 5 realm, and then rank among the earth immortals, and wait until the Yuaning realm before going down the mountain. Miyu is actually quite resentful at the moment. Originally, Cui Dongshan had arranged for these children, but he did not expect an old sword fairy Luxiazu in the Yupu realm to fall from the sky. For example, Yu Qingzhang and Cui Dongshan once planned to reap him as one of the heirs. He Xiangting, who likes to read, would hand it over to the teacher to be a disciple. Although planting autumn is not a sword repairer, who said that only a sword fairy can preach? Just because this is located in Laojiangxian, it is very likely that Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting will be taken away, and Cui Dongshan's long-term layout will be disrupted. If it wasn't for the sake of Yu Yu's own consecration, no matter who he met in the Luopa mountain, he would be kind and gentle, and would not hit the smiley person with his hand, otherwise Miyu would definitely have to learn from this old sword immortal. Among them, Sweet Choice on the right was more unexpected, and he took the initiative to pick Ching Chaolu, a little fat man who likes to cook. Be the first to become a pair of masters and apprentices, and only waited for the mountain master to return to his hometown, and added a note to the genealogy of the patriarch Hall. Ching Chaolu sent a message at that time, and I don't know why Sui right side wanted to accept it as a direct heir. As a result, the future master said the heart of the child with only one sentence. I'm young, and I'm fierce enough to punch, I can practice swords and martial arts in the future. Qing Chaolu immediately felt that she had to recognize this master. It's boring to praise him anyway. How do you think you are? Will you have no points? But praise him for his talent in martial arts. Can he be unhappy? Therefore, Qing Chaolu has now left the Baijiantai, following Sui Right to take the wind and kite ferry to Tongisao. After that, he took control of his long life and fell in love with Nalan Yubiao, a small financial fan, and the two sides were equally fond of each other. Cui Dongshan deliberately asked Miyu to accept Higu as a direct disciple, but Mi Dajiangxian and this little kid both looked down on each other. However, compared to Cui Wei and Yu Xiaohui, the future mentors and apprentices of Cui Dongshan who were appointed by Cui Dongshan, it is still a bit better. In fact, Cui Wei, as a Yuanying realm sword repairman, is not low in swordsmanship. Isn't Sui Right side also Yuanying? Moreover, Cui Wei's swordsmanship is mixed, his killing power is not weak, and he is also good at hiding. But Yu Xiaohui just looked down on this hometown Jian Xiao who fled before the battle, and asked me to apprentice with him to learn art. Can't afford to lose this person. When the group came to the worship platform, Chen Pingon put away the fuzhou, clasped his fists towards Yu Yu, and apologized. Let Yu Jifeng wait a long time. Wait a long time. Yu Yu was a bit at a loss. It seemed that he had worked hard for a few days, but old Jianxiu still smiled and clasped his fists and said, this mountain is so good, I'm a little bit reluctant to leave. After Chen Pingon realized, he knew that he had made a mistake. In these days, too many things have happened, and I have this illusion. Miyu laughed and said, if you don't want to leave, you can stay. Who dares to rush to the old sword fairy to leave, see if I agree or not. Yu Yu was a little embarrassed. Don't look at the prestige of Mi Dajiangxian in the local sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, not particularly high. But some foreign sword repairers actually suffered a lot from Mi Yu. Among them is Yu Yu's old friend Pu He. Otherwise, Pu Lauer's stinky temper with his mouth full of dung, is willing to say something similar to Mi Yu on the wine table. Mi is not low in power. Although Yu Yu didn't know the specific inside story, he just thought with his butt, knowing that Pu Lauer must have been hacked by Mi Yu. Master Hidden Officer squinted Mi Dajiangxian. Mi Yu immediately smiled at Yu Hippie. Yu Fu, the family doesn't say a few words, don't worry about it. Yu Yu smiled casually. It's not that Mi Jianxian is too worried if a family doesn't enter the house. Mi Yu can't help but slander, you are the sword fairy, and your whole family is the sword fairy. It's not that Mi Yu likes to keep grudges and keep accounts, but it is Yu Yu who calls the sword fairy every time he meets, and it is not a day or two to bear him. In my hometown, there are not many who can be called the sword fairy, and the sword fairy like Mi Hu and Yu Qing do not like to be called the sword fairy, so it is better to call them by name. As long as he can bear the beating and stand the beating, I saw Chen Shi on the road and called Lao Qin, for example, I called Dong Sanging, Dong Lao Pif, or even Xiao Dong, it was all right. Yu Yu and Chen Pingon talked about their plans to receive Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting as a direct transmission. Chen Pingon smiled and nodded, just about to say that since they are willing, they have no objections. It's just that Ning Yao looked at the two children and asked, reason. The two children's faces were pale, their lips trembled, and they couldn't say a word in a daze. Mi Yu sighed. It's not good to meet someone, but Ning Yao happened to be met. It was time for the two children to be guilty and timid. Chen Pingon hesitated, but still did not disturb the conversation between Ning Yao and his fellow Jianxiu. Except for the little fat man Qing Chaolu who had gone to Tongisao, the other 8 children were all present. As Bai Xian expected, the two girls Nalan Yubi and Yao Xiaoyan were almost crazy. Especially that King Sun Chen saw Ning Yao, the little girl who had no expression or even eyesight flushed for the first time. She clenched fists with both hands, she wanted to say something, but didn't dare to speak. These children, seeing Ning Yao, are like returning to their hometown. No matter how Chen Pingan is regarded as a fellow countryman or the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jinchi, he is different from Ning Yao after all. So even if it is the same thing and the same truth, what Ning Yao said is a different truth from Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan coughed and walked away with Yu Yu. Xianwei sighed and was very sad. Good fellow, is there such a big mountain on Shanju Qin? Is there such a group of little children under the command of Master Chao? 8 out of 10, he was on the thief ship by mistake. Ning Yao always didn't like to make rounds and corners, and soon after talking with those children, one said one. It was the first time that Chen Pingan saw those children with different temperaments. They were so obedient and obedient. The end result is that the old Jianqiu Yue will soon leave the Luopa mountain with the 2 children who have the status of master and apprentice, and travel across the continent. King Sun Chun became an anonymous disciple of Ning Yao, but he needed to stay in Haran world to practice, and would not go to Feishing city with Ning Yao. The uncle Bai Xian finally became honest today. He said that he would not go to Xingting to set up a stall in the near future. He had to stay at the sword worship platform and practice well. Chen Pingan then took her to the Patriarch Hall of Jiaisfeng to honor the fragrance. Both Xiao Mo and Xian Wei have not been formally included in the genealogy, so forget it today. Xian Wei will not serve as an enshrinement like Xiao Mo, but an anonymous guest of Luopa Mountain. After all, no matter how courage Chen Pingan was, he would not dare to serve as Xian Wei's preacher. If you really dare to act like this, you might be easily struck by lightning. The unintentional actions of ordinary people and the deliberate actions of cultivators are worlds apart. The key to Zhushitang is on the side of Shaon Wanshu. A group of people waited outside the door, and Chen Lingjun had already gone to inform the news. Zhu Lian and Shaon Wanshu came to Jisifeng together. After the pink-skirt girl stopped, she smiled brightly and gave a blessing to the group. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded. I bought some Yunzhen stone with Kai Jinjian on the green juniper peak of Yunxia mountain before. When I turn back, I will refine the root dragon veins placed on Kaiyunfang and Xianchao mountain. Then ask the little warm tree, which mountain top I want to choose. A place for monasticism. Help her choose a location to open a mansion. What if the little Nwanshu is not in the Golden Core realm? Turn back to the Patriarch's Hall to discuss the matter, and see who dares to object. After hanging the 3 statues with Zhushitang to worship the fragrance, Chen Pingan and Ning Yao walked out of the door, and Shaon Wanshu skillfully locked the door. Immortal Wei was relieved, but fortunately, Chen Shanzhu had another mountain top. This legendary patriarch hall on the mountain looked very magnificent. Chen Pingan and Zhu Lian, the great butler of the Downfall Mountain, walked side by side and talked about things. In fact, when Cui Dongshan took the initiative to ask to be the first suzerain of the next sept, then all the candidates for the lower sect of Luopa Mountain would be completely finalized. The Master Seed will temporarily be a clerk on the next side, in charge of the money bags, and in charge of the treasury revenue and expenditure. To be honest, as the national teacher of Nanyuan, Zhongqiu was hailed by the world as the sage of literature and the master of Wu, in the past, and he can't be too much in any position on the mountain. Jian Xiu Chui Wei, temporarily serving as the next master. As for the chief worship of the next sept, it will be worshipped by the second seat of Luopa Mountain, and Mi Dajiangxian will be held. The position is fair. Sui right, there will be no title status, even if it is given, she would not appreciate it. On the Grey Mountain side, the old Zhuiying dynasty, who had the pseudonym Xiao Poxian, was a survivor of the country, and the Prince Zhuiying, who had the surname of Dugu, was accompanied by a maid, Meng Long. There is also Chen Shui, whose pseudonym is Shi. She and her younger sister, Qiushi, were both sisters of the Dajiao Mountain in Luzhou, Beiju. The three of them have also been taken by Cui Dongshan to Tongyi's Hao. In addition, Liu Baixiang's two direct disciples seem to be the next disciples in the future. Chen Pingan joked, "Cui Dongshan, the lower sect master, would you follow our upper sect to use A to dig the foot of the wall?" Zhu Lian smiled and said, "I didn't think it was that the son of the prince said so, it seems to have this meaning." Chen Pingan picked up Chao Jun from the Great Wall of Jianqi for nothing. The Yuanying realm sword repaired, and Chao Jun was very likely to break the realm. This Chao Jun is also a wonderful person anyway. He didn't become the chief worshipper, so he took the initiative to ask for the title of the last worshipper of the Fallen Mountain sect. Zhu Lian said, "Pei Qian is now at Xinqiang Temple in Fudi, so I didn't call her over." Chen Pingan nodded. After going to the account room, Chen Pingan told Wei Wenlong that he needed to embezzle 100 grains of rain from the treasury to be loaned to Lin Shuyi. "Forget it, it's a delivery. Borrow a fart, if the money is not good enough, it is better to send it directly." There are not many people who can get money from Chen Pingan. Wei Wenlong smiled and said that now there are a lot of rain money lying in the account books, and the mountain owner does not have to worry about being stretched. Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Money can be borrowed, and it must be borrowed. It's just that Lin Shui can be a famous guest in the next clan." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "It's feasible." The spy on Luopa Mountain and Jinghua Shuiyu will be temporarily handed over to Zhu Lian and Qin Lingjun. Then there is Nujiatis Baozhai, which has been short of suitable candidates. Before, Chen Pingan went to the Qingfufang to find Mr. Hong, and tried to dig the foot of the wall again and again, but it failed. Therefore, for the time being, I can only let the master of the law preside over the overall situation, and then hand it over to the sisters of Zhuchai Island to help with specific matters. Now Luopashan has 2 ferry boats. The temporary steward of the Dragon Boat Flipping Inc. is Lu Chongren, the owner of Zhuchai Island, who has leased the back of the scorpion fish. The two parties have exchanged courtesy and have been getting along well over the years. As for the wind kite of the transcontinental ferry, Chen Pingan intends to let the long life and the second in charge of the trivial affairs of dealing with people and things, such as the old Taoist Jia Xing, and let me you take the ferry there when he is free, then the fairy Fenjuan's face is all there is. Chen Pingan suddenly remembered something. In the city of entry on the night ship, he obtained an ancient bao named Yunmeng Changsong, from the bearded man named Zhang San, Bao Fuzhai, which was a genuine object at a fair price. The rank is uncertain. Chen Pingan always feels that this treasure is a bit hot. The patriarch of the 3 educations once visited the town together. Somehow, the old master of the Taoist temple gave out that extremely rare Taoist picture after drinking a cup of tea at the gate of the mountain. At that time, after being refined by Cui Dongshan, a vision was born. A mountain gave birth to purple qi, the top of the mountains had no 2 days, and there was a moon and the tens of thousands of trees, forming a world of its own, with the sun and the moon rising and falling. So that even Weibo Tangtangshanjin, in the mountains and rivers under his jurisdiction, could not freely enter and exit the Luopa mountain. The only flaw is that it is extremely expensive to open and support such a protection of the mountain, which consumes immortal money, so Luopa Mountain cannot open the large array all the time, but compared to the preciousness of the Taoist picture, this small flaw can be ignored. Any sect in the Haoran world can be used as the treasure of Jinshan Mountain. Hearing what Cui Dongshan said in the letter sent to the capital, it was a great contribution made by the considerate hospitality of the millet grains. Chen Pingan doesn't think this is a joke. In addition, in the former site of the mountain temple on the top of the Luopa mountain, Cui Dongshan has set up a golden thunder pond formation around it, and inside it also enshrines a picture of the sword fairy from the inverted mountain Jingjian pavilion. In the future, the gate of the patriarch hall of the next sect will hang the couplet given by Wu Shuangjiang, and the rank is astonishing. If you count the 12 flying swords that Qin Pingan succeeded in the Yuban city of the Yunwen dynasty, paired with the picture of the Taiping Mountains that has been suffering from a clever woman can hardly cook without rice, it is simply a seamless attack effect. So in the future, the two landscape formations of Luopa Mountain and Xiaozong will be both offensive and defensive, and both can be described as the ultimate. As for this trip to the capital, I didn't go for nothing. According to Qin Pingan's previous estimation, the number of fragments of his own natal porcelain shed is as many as 6 and as few as 4. Now, one of them was recovered from the Queen Mother of Li, and, not surprisingly, it was hidden in the house next to the ancestral house in Qin Pingan and I Ping Lane. In addition, the Ma family in Xinghua Lane and Kaiang Glinzong of Luzhou in Beiju are all likely to have hidden debris. Qin Pingan would ask clearly, the kind that asked in person. Walking to the bamboo building, Qin Pingan smiled at Xiaomi Li. I have to go to Xianyu County out of town right away. After I get home, I will take you to Hongzhou town. Yanghua, the of water on the Tiefu River, has gone to Dadu, the central part of China, to serve as a prince. It's just that now the position of Tai Fujiang's new water is still up in the air. According to the latest Jinyu genealogy issued by Dai, Tai Fujiang is from the 3rd rank, and the embroidered river water is from the 4th rank. Chongtan River Leaf Bamboo Green and Hiyuye River Godly Jean are only 5 products. As for the Longshu River, which has long since risen from Zixinga, Malanhua was also promoted from Hippo to River God. Although the rank is not high, it should have been built for temples and temples, but according to Cui Dongshan's statement, Mr. Yang gave it to the old woman in Xinghua Alley promised to enjoy the incense after 30 years. In addition to being the place where the 3 rivers converge, Hongzhou town actually has 5 streams. Among them, Lanchi County, located in the upper reaches of the Yuya River, is known as the Waste of the 6 Rivers. Loquats are very famous. There is also a fairy cliff near the Lanchi River, and an underground river that secretly communicates with the Chongdan River. Qin Pingan must visit the Yuyejiang Temple and the Water God's Mansion. The goddess of water, Li Qingzhu, must also meet. Millet reached out his hand to cover his mouth, laughed and said, "Small things, don't worry, don't worry." Putting his hand away, the millet grain pulled the rope of the messenger cotton bag. It was heavy and his shoulders were very sore. There are actually a lot of big and small things. Disciple Zhao Xuxia, Zhao Luanluan. Zhang Jiazhen, brother Fu Lu Jiangchu. Later, I would also give Pei Qian a hand-built duobaog. There is a letter in the backyard of the Yang family drugstore, waiting to be read by himself. When I returned from Qingyuan County, I had to be on the 2nd floor of the Zhulu to teach the boxing exercises for Pei Qian, a major disciple of the mountain. I searched for a city, located in a county in Huangting State, where I will be a teacher in the school in the future. Come to the bamboo building. Zhu Lian took Xiao Mo and Xianwei to sit on the stone table beside the cliff. Ning Yao followed Qin Pingan into the house. Speaking of the residence of the mountain lord Qin Pingan on the 1st floor of the bamboo building, there is Wu Shuangjiang's Tai at the time. The 2 seals of the copybook have been scattered, but there is still a flower of the rhyme, the heart is like the world. Green lotus color. There are also 2 copybooks that my husband personally asked for from Su Zi and Lu Qi, Huokai Tai, Qi Drunk Tai, the same with the rhyme of Taoism, the literary luck is abundant. Before participating in the discussion of the Confucian Temple, I ran into Lin Qing, a guest of the Chiu family in Yuzhou, Lixiazu. Side section, west of the golden sky, not in the sun, the immortal is drunk, coming from the moon cave, flying sword like a rainbow, pinning Nanchin to open the veins, and turning the palm of Beta Yaotian gate. 4 words on the bottom of the seal, Xing Jianqingshin. Putting this seal on the desk, Qin Pingan then gently placed the white jade Ganoderma with beautiful inscriptions on the bookshelf. Chen Pingon took a step back with his sleeves in both hands, stretched out his sleeves, and slightly shifted the placement of the white jade Ganoderma lucidum. It's like a swallow holding mud, like an ant moving house, just like more than a year. After my parents left, before the age of 14, they barely held the family business, but fortunately, every year has passed since then. After that, Chen Pingon took Ning Yao and called Xiaomo and Xianwei to go down the mountain together. He was going to the Chaotu and New Year's Eve shops in Qilong Alley to check the accounts. Xiaomili did not follow, she had to patrol the mountain. The little girl sprinted happily while singing that stinky tofu is delicious, and the golden melon seed thief replied. Xianwei just accumulated a little confidence in that mountain, and when he saw these two market shops, he felt helpless again. Is this the source of money for your mountain? Isn't that about the same as yourself, or earning some hard cash every day? That's fine, it really doesn't work, so I can only rely on my own and go back to my old career. When I came here, I saw a few streets in the town that were quite expensive. I looked back to see if I could find some money there. The big disciple of Pei Qian, who was originally named Zhou Junchen, was nicknamed Amon, and was nicknamed Little Mute Ba. Standing on the small bench behind the counter, today the child actually called to Master Chen Pingan for the first time. Chen Pingan inevitably murmured a little bit, and asked with a smile, "Ah, are you planning to borrow money from me?" Ah Sha shook his head, and said with a stern look, "I just thought that the ancestors can see everything and take good care of some guys who are guarding and stealing." A white-haired boy ran over from the backyard and said angrily, "Ah, when do I eat cakes and don't pay for it now? I have to show evidence for planting mischief." Asha laughed and said, "What I eat in front of me is after the checkout. What about the ones you stole? I'm counting them all." The white-haired boy's eyes rolled around. Actually, it is the cake that Chui Peanut's stolen from next door. I can't stop it, I can't beat her. Chen Pingon rubbed his eyebrows. The white-haired boy stared at the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes, with his hands on his hips, and raised his chin. "You, what realm?" said. "I always feel that this guy is more dangerous." The Huawei Tianma, now named Huang Ho, is actually in Sui Chu Gong's real name, Natural. I don't know if it's because of my brain cramps or something, but I also have the thought of accepting apprentices, clamoring to be a master, and after a few days, I can learn from the hermit ancestor to be a master. I often stay alone in the backyard, jumping and looking to the side of Luopa Mountain, raising my arms and shouting, yelling into the mountains, to grab the apprentices. One is not too small, two are not too much, one serves tea and the other delivers water. In addition, either change the way to cheat some money from Chui Peanut, or at the door of the shop, holding a toothpick, grinning to himself. At such a young age, he has gray hair. Some of the neighbors in the neighborhood who are getting older in the streets have kindly persuaded the treasurer in private to take this poor baby to see the doctor. There is some money, which is too frugal. Xiao Mo was actually quite surprised. In the shop, there would be an ascendant transcendent demon in the shop. As for the female ghost wearing a man's mortal relic, it is nothing strange. Xiao Mo replied with a smile, "Anything in the realm is vain." There was a girl who hurriedly rushed from the Chaotu shop to Chen Pingon and respectfully gave a blessing, and said timidly, "The slave servant Chui Peanut, I have seen the master of the mountain." Chen Pingon smiled and nodded, but he was extremely awkward. It was Tian Wan from Jingyang Mountain, Zhou's younger sister, who was intercepted by Chui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen, but was then stripped out by Chui Dongshan, twisted into a wig, and then put into a flower. Now, Chui Peanut, a girl who is doing miscellaneous work in Qilong Lane. She is now Chui Dongshan's sister in name. And Chui Dongshan also obtained from Tian Wan a mysterious world of caves with a very high rank but no name. Although it is not among the 72 small caves, according to Tian Wan, the treasures of the heavens, materials and earth inside are powerful and powerful. Fortune, it can support the qi refining practice of an ascended realm monk. The implication is that an earth immortal, as long as the path of cultivation is smooth, he can always stay in this isolated cave and sky, and he can enter the ascension realm without asking for the slightest foreign objects. Among them is the Jiangke Immortal Mansion, which is mysterious, and there is no cave in the sky. There is also a stream named Danchi, with gloomy water and jade-like flowing water, which is most suitable for alchemy. In addition, there is a red pine mountain, Poria Ganoderma lucidum ginseng, etc. There are a lot of spiritual trees and fairy plants. It's like a natural treasury at your fingertips. Since this cave sky was brought back by Cui Dongshan, the lower sect master, it must be placed in the lower sect of Tonggizhao because of emotion and reason. After all, Shangzong's Luopa Mountain already has a blessed land with a top grade and has reached the bottleneck of the Lotus Flower blessed land, plus the Sulongjing, which is the connection between the cave and the blessed land, not to mention the one that Zhu Liancai came from. Seat Fox Country. It's just that the piece of fat that Cui Dongshan really cares about is the extremely famous cicada. It's a pity that Tian Wan didn't lie, not on her. Of course, not being on her does not mean that she is not clear about the whereabouts of this cave. Presumably with Cui Dongshan's temperament, he would definitely not stop there. Because this ancient cave is considered to be one of the most important sites in the ancient Shu realm, it is rumored that there were many ancient sword celestial beings here. Chen Pingan asked Xiaoma and Xianwei to stay at the shop and return to the mountain together later. He took Ning Yao along the steps of Qilong Lane, climbed up the steps, and walked to the top of the steps. Chen Pingan turned his head and looked at him. After that, he walked all the way to Nipping Lane, passing Xinghua Lane during the period. Zhou Zi's stall was placed here. A drunk and blind old Taoist returned to Qilong Alley. This was not a happy event for the neighbors in the neighborhood. The wine was drunk and the red envelopes were confiscated. The distant relatives are not as good as the neighbors. Bone. When the old Jia heard that Shanju Qin and Mrs. Shanju had just left Qilong Alley, the old Taoist stomped his feet, beat his chest, and felt sorry. After all, he is an old in the Dragon Gate realm. Although Jia Sheng is blind, he runs a little energy, and his vision is actually as normal as ordinary people. I heard that Shamo is a new worship on the mountain, and that one can see through it as a fake Taoist priest. Xianwei, who would be Kuqing, immediately took the two to drink at his own shop, and the white-haired boy followed to eat and drink. As soon as I drank a drink, I never stopped eating a plate of wine and food. I drank Xianwei with a lot of nose and tears, and his face was flushed. He held the bowl with one hand, and the other hand held hands with the old Taoist on the table. Shake vigorously, everything is silent, all in the drink. This old immortal Jia who has also been in the world and knows the most bitterness is really a confidant. Even if anyone drove himself away, he couldn't leave. As for Chen Ling Jun, I just taught brother Xiaoma to draw a boxing, and the two of them were gesturing blindly there. Chen Pingan led Ningyao to Niping Alley. Once a second Xiazong is established, Luopishan will be upgraded to the authentic in the world, and the Xiazong will be promoted to Shangzong. There are only a handful of authentic immortals in the world. Like Haoran, there are only two in the world. When he reached the alley that he couldn't be more familiar with, Chen Pingan stopped at the door of the ancestral house, glanced at the courtyard gate of Song Jisin next door, and was not in a hurry to retrieve the shards of natal porcelain. Turning his gaze again, Chen Pingan glanced at the house next to him, as if he had been unoccupied since he remembered. Ningyao also glanced at the house of the master and servant next door, remembering that he seemed to have seen a short winter melon girl with a pose. Chen Pingan opened the courtyard door and the door of the house. The courtyard and the house were all clean, with spring couplets and blessings posted on the doors. Chen Pingan entered the room and lay down on the table with his chin resting on his arm. Ning Yao asked, "What's the matter?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "If you marry a wife like this, what can your husband ask for?" Ning Yao held his cheek. "I haven't been here for a long time." Chen Pingan sat for a moment, then stood up. Ning Yao knew where to go. Walking out of the alley together, after crossing the stone arch bridge on the Longshu River, Chen Pingan and Ning Yao walked together on the rural road to the grave. Chen Pingan handed Ning Yao 3 sticks of incense, holding 3 sticks of incense in his own hands, and offering them together. Then Chen Pingan knelt down and began to add soil to the grave. Ning Yao squatted aside, took out a small bag, and asked softly, "I brought it from Wutsai Tiansha, is it appropriate?" Chen Pingan turned his head and smiled, "It's appropriate, how inappropriate." Ning Yao breathed a sigh of relief. He took the bag, poured out the soil inside, patted it a few minutes, and tamped the head of the grave slightly. Chen Pingan's eyes were red, and his voice was hoarse. He just called father and mother twice, as if he couldn't say it anymore. He could only move his lips slightly and mutter in a low voice. It seems that when he was 14 years old, the straw shoe boy officially went abroad for the first time. Started to travel far away from home. But Chen Pingan didn't talk to anyone, even Ning Yao and Lu Xianying. In fact, it was the road under the feet when he came. With the help of neighbors in the neighborhood, a yellow-faced and thin straw-shoe child walked in front of the coffin. That road, from Ni Ping Alley to here, is the farthest trip of Chen Pingan in his life. It may be because today's visit to the grave, with more of her by her side, she will definitely marry the beloved woman who came into the house, Ning Yao. Chen Pingan took out another jug of wine and sprinkled it on the grave, then gently placed the jug in the mud near his feet. The man squatted on the ground, covering his face with one hand, his shoulders trembling, and a soft whimper leaked from his fingers. It seems that until this moment, Xiao Pingan of the year, and Chen Pingan of today, have really gotten married. I really dared to tell them that I had a very good life on the side of my parents' grave. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.